£6.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This.
Hello, a very good morning to you just after 6 o'clock on Sunday, April the 6th. I'm David Bull and this is Weekend Breakfast. Hope you're very well. Now, yesterday, the Grand National, I did actually put a bet on. I put many bets on. I lost some money, I won some money. I came out down. Anyway, great news for you this morning. The Brighton Marathon is taking place this morning around the Sussex Seaside Resort. Over 10,000 people are running. Actually, the biggest marathon in the UK is London, which has over 50,000 runners. That's on the 27th of this month. And if you are taking part in the Brighton Marathon, very good luck to you. Dearie me. Also, today is Tartan Day. It's a day showcasing the rich tapestry of Scottish heritage, culture and tradition. It commemorates the signing of the Declaration of Arbroath. Yes, that was in 1320. And let me tell you, it's New Beer's Eve today. That's right, New Beer's Eve. This day actually marks the day before the end of Prohibition in the United States. It's a reminder that we are all free to enjoy beer, yes, and we must do so.
We'll drink to Lily the pink, the saviour of the human race, for she invented medicinal compound.
Right, let's move on to this morning's fascinating facts. Today's fascinating facts. So some really good ones for you this hour. On this day in 1580, an earth tremor damaged several London churches, including the old St Paul's Cathedral. On this day in 1907, rather love this one, the death of Thomas Beecham. Now, who was Thomas Beecham? Well, of course, he was the founder of the large pharmaceutical business, Beecham's. The Grade 2 listed Beecham's Clock Tower and offices in St Helens were built as a headquarters and factory for his company in the 1880s. And on this day in 1913, suffragettes increased their militant activities by cutting telephone lines and damaging post boxes. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
It's a weekend breakfast, start your day right. We're serving up lots and the best start news. With David and Duncan, it's a weekend cruise.
Well, there you are. There's your clue with David and Duncan. I'm joined this morning by Duncan Barks, broadcaster extraordinaire. Good morning.
Morning. I like the idea that we can drink lots of beer as of tomorrow. Yes. That's a bit of a result.
It's an excellent result.
Not that we need permission.
Really. No, beer is good.
Beer is good.
Beer is good.
Healthy.
Healthy. Yes, we should do it. And also, I happen to mention there the Declaration of Arbroath. Do you know anything about that?
Well, is that the Tartan thing you mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm half Scottish, right? And my tartan... Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, I was just surprised.
So my tartan, I have the right to wear the Mackenzie tartan.
Yes.
Because my grandmother was a Mackenzie.
Ah, I'm an Innis.
Are you?
Yes.
Does that mean our clans have fought over the years? The
Probably.
centuries,
So
yeah?
what colour is your tartan?
It's kind of green. It's greenish black with a bit of red. I'm doing it from memory.
Whereas mine is red. I mean, it looks like a tartan a kid would draw. It's red with yellow and some green, I think.
Are you saying it's a simple tartan?
Everything about me is simple. Let me just be very clear about that. So the Declaration of Arbroath, which is quite interesting, 1320, it was written by Scottish barons, addressed to Pope John the 22nd. So this was King Robert's I's response to his excommunication for disobeying the Pope.
Oh.
Okay? This is essentially called when the Pope demanded in 1317 for a truce in the First War of Scottish independence. So the letter essentially asserted the independence of the Kingdom of Scotland and denounced English attempts to subjugate it.
Quite right. I get very emotional if I watch Braveheart.
Do you?
Yeah, I've had a beer, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah,
I found it was very Americanised.
Yeah, I know, but my English and Scottish sides do kind of... They're not entirely sure where they should go with Braveheart.
Well, that's very interesting, actually.
There's a conflict going on.
Well, so when I wear my kilt, and obviously I'm a true Scotsman when I wear that kilt, obviously, let's say, I mean, it's a bit early to discuss these things.
Suffice to say, you're feeling quite aerated.
Yes, well, quite, yes, well ventilated.
Ventilated.
Yes, well, quite well ventilated. And then my brother said to me, well, you're not really Scottish. I mean, we are obviously partly Scottish, but obviously there's far more Irish as well. That would explain why I like beer.
So it's really interesting. You know, you can get these DNA tests. My daughter bought me a DNA test a few years ago for a birthday present. And I was born on the south coast in England, so I describe myself as English, but my DNA came back as like 68% Scottish. So when the Six Nations is on, I'll quite happily support Scotland because I battle. Do I just define myself as a Scot even though I was born in England? I don't know.
That's fascinating, actually. And when I did mine, I am Scandinavian, which would explain an awful lot. I am predominantly English, but I've also got some French blood, which I was very embarrassed about.
Oh dear.
Ooh la la.
I'd have a transfusion if I was you.
Yes, exactly. That's what I thought. Definitely what I thought. Also, tonight is the Olivier Awards taking place tonight at the Royal Albert Hall, hosted by Beverley Knight, Billy Porter. Established in 1976, they celebrate world-class status of London theatre. They're Britain's most prestigious stage honours.
Ooh, who are the runners and riders then?
Well, I knew you were going to ask that. Now, Best Revival, The Importance of Being Earnest, Machinal by Sophie Treadwell. You've got Oedipus by Robert Ike, Waiting for Godot, Samuel Beckett.
Okay.
I don't think we've seen any of those.
No, I haven't seen any of those.
No, well, I mean, The Importance of Being Earnest, we know, don't we?
It's a classic. What about who are the actors?
Best Actor, Jorge Bosch, Tom Eden in Waiting for Godot, Elliot Levy in Giant, Ben Whishaw.
Oh, I know him.
He's excellent.
Yeah.
He's in Bluets. He was excellent in Bond. He was also excellent in something else I saw recently.
He was also the voice of Paddington Bear, wasn't he, in the Paddington Bear films? Yeah.
He's done very well.
Oh, I saw him in something. What did I watch? It was a Netflix thing.
Yes.
It was quite violent but brilliant, and it was set in London.
Yes.
Who was the woman? There was a big female star. Was like this.
Yes, I know who you meant. She was the spy handler.
No, she was a spy, wasn't she? She was like a mum by day and a spy by night. And then Ben Whishaw, who played a character, kind of appeared.
What's her name? She's a very famous actress.
Keira Knightley? No.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, Keira Knightley. Yes.
What was it called?
Oh, I don't know. We'll come back to that. If you know, let us know. 0344 499
And the spy handler was the woman who was in Happy Valley, Sarah Lancashire.
That's who I'm thinking about.
She was the spy handler.
She's the handler.
Yeah.
And you're right, Keira Knightley is correct.
That was good. What
was it called?
Was it Black Orchid?
No, that's the White Lotus.
I'm getting confused.
Do let us know, please. Do you know, I do this all the time. So I watch something and I think it was marvellous, and then someone says, well, what was it called? I've absolutely no idea.
That's going to really annoy me.
Black Doves.
Hey, I knew it was a black something.
You said Black Orchid.
Well, I got it half right.
It's Black Orchid. Okay.
What was it called?
Black Orchid.
Yeah.
Still.
It's good. Yeah.
Oh, Black Doves. No,
Black Doves. It was good. I liked it.
No, I thought it was excellent.
There was a lot of it set around London as well. Borough
Yes.
Market was used.
It certainly was.
Just up the road. It was
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Okay, good. Shall we move on?
Sorry.
No. Anyway, so that's the Olivier Awards, which are taking place tonight. So have a look. The runners and riders. I'm still absolutely devastated. I lost so much money yesterday on the Grand National. Very upset about that. What happened to duffel coat?
Well, so you and I were talking about this.
Yeah.
I had an outside flutter on duffel coat. I think I had a £5 each way. That came nowhere, but I did back the winner, Nick Rocket, at £5 each way.
Oh, drinks on you.
Yeah, so after I'm not boasting and I'm not remotely smug, but after my other bets, deducting those from my win, I'm 140 quid up.
Whoa!
So, yeah.
So I lost 31.10.
Right.
Yeah, not great.
Yeah.
No, I lost 41.10, so I'm down 30.
How do you bet? Do you do it online or do you still go to a bookies?
No, I had an app.
Right, I've got the app.
But also I had a beer, actually, and so I was trying to do it whilst drinking.
Yeah. You must gamble responsibly.
Yes. Well, I did it with 2 minutes to go because I met Steve Denyer in a pub, and anyway, he then distracted me and I wasn't really looking at the form. I just chose the outfit or what I thought was a nice name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It wasn't actually the way to do it. Anyway, let's move on, shall we, and talk about, if you are just waking up this morning, let's talk about what is going on in the paper. The Observer front page, actually, there's a lot about tariffs, day 6 of tariffs, and of course, the way the West is responding to all of this. We spoke a great deal yesterday about the United Kingdom really just needs to hold its ground, to not retaliate, just look closely at what is going on in the rest of the world. We saw China putting on 34% tariffs. We've seen the EU up in outrage. You saw Macron yesterday. They said, wow, we need to put on reciprocal tariffs immediately. The government has asked businesses to come back with some sort of ideas about which products should be targeted by tariffs. All of that is a bit concerning, but this is the front page of the Observer, not a paper I'd normally start with. But it says Starmer orders economic reset amidst Trump tariff mayhem. So Keir Starmer preparing to rethink key elements of the government's economic policy. This is an emergency response to the tariff blitz. Now, Downing Street is increasingly concerned that this is going to lead to a global trade war. We talked about the price of that, something like £1 trillion. He goes further to say old assumptions should be discarded in the UK's response. He says that he and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, are preparing to raise taxes again or change her ironclad fiscal rules. How much of this is as a response to those tariffs, and how much is a response, Duncan, for the fact that she's actually run out of road?
Oh, it's convenient, isn't it? It's a convenient excuse. So my theory is, and I've written a piece for the Daily Express tomorrow about this. My hunch will be we're going to see more taxes later this year when she does the proper budget, as opposed to what some people call the emergency budget. I think we're going to see a wealth tax. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think
when you say that, what sort of level?
I don't know, 2 to 2.5% on assets over 10 million. Because
we've already got an exodus of rich people from this country.
But I don't think these people are clever enough, and I'm talking about the cabinet, to think of any other ways of raising money. And there was a poll out that was done by a Survation for Labour List, which is kind of like a website for Labour Party members. 89% of members said they backed the idea of a wealth tax. You got some Labour MPs and the unions all going, this is the answer. I think they're going to do that.
Yeah,
I really do.
But it's not the answer, is it?
No.
This is, I argued this yesterday. We're in an amazing position right now. So if we play this cleverly, and you've got the EU being taxed at 20%, if we actually say, and you saw Elon Musk as well overnight saying actually he wants to get to a position where there are no trade barriers, but so therefore don't rise to Trump. When the minute that China put their tariffs up, Trump replied in capital letters saying this is completely the wrong thing to do.
I think Starmer, I'm not a Starmer fan, but he's right not to knee-jerk here, and I'm a free trade disciple, right? I think, free trade is great, it benefits people, it's about wealth. Tariffs and taxes are bad, it damages the economy, it ultimately makes people poorer, it's not good for growth, and I think in this particular case, Starmer is right to just take a step back and go, let's see what happens.
I would agree totally, and I'm not normally a fan of Starmer. Now, the language emanating from the circles are going to be seen by economists and politicians as preparing the ground for big shifts in economic policy. Not just the tax on the wealthy, but also what other taxes. I mean, I still think it was so disingenuous to come into the election and say we're not going to raise taxes on working people. Well, quite frankly, that was a lie, wasn't it?
Yes.
Also, he spoke to Emmanuel Macron. This was yesterday to talk about global economic and security impacts. David Lammy warning that we could be flooded with cheap goods from China. Now, Lammy, I wouldn't say that he's probably known for his business prowess.
No.
He says Trump learned to do business in the New York mafia-influenced real estate market. His tactics are based on extortion. You hit and keep hitting for as long as you can. That is totally the wrong way to deal with Trump. I think you have to be strong, but you have to be pragmatic.
But also, so a long time ago, and I'm talking about 9, 10, 11 years ago, I read the Trump book, The Art of the Deal.
Oh, yes.
Which I think came out in the late 80s. And then there's some debate about how much of it he actually wrote. Because if you go online, there's another writer who said, well, basically, I wrote it with a little bit of assistance from Trump. But it's quite interesting. And what I can't get a handle on here is how much of this is part of this approach to deal making, where you kind of like go,
100%.
Right. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. What are you going to do about it? He's almost he's fired the starting gun.
That's his opening bid.
It's his opening salvo, exactly. So, and what he wants is he wants people to come to him because he's saying, well, I'm doing this to you. What are you going to do about it? And he wants people to go, well, Donald, how about we do this and we try and make things a little bit better, a bit easier. And there's an essence of that in that book, The Art of the Deal. You go in hard to begin with, then you very slowly just pull it back, and ultimately you get what you want out of it, which is seen as a compromise.
I agree totally. Talk to him in a language he understands, is what I would say. Let's look at the Sunday Times. Now, this is another headline this morning, which leads on nicely to this. Starmer to admit that globalisation has failed as this tariff war rages. So the Prime Minister, and we were talking about this, I hate the way that it's briefed out the day before, saying that tomorrow the Prime Minister will say that. Well, why don't we wait till tomorrow when we actually work out what he is going to say? But anyway, the Prime Minister will declare an end to globalisation and admit it's failed millions of voters as the fallout from the tariffs reverberate around the world. He will say the seismic global economic effects prove the government must move further and faster. I welcome that, whatever that means. They're going to make some pro-growth announcements. This is the peach. Easing regulations on electric car manufacturers, so therefore that actually they've realised that that is actually pie in the sky, and Ed Miliband is going to have to take yet another back seat. Rachel Reeves is talking to India about economic and financial dialogue. I think that's a good thing. India, growing economy, of course. Speak English. It could be a very strong partner for us. But also they're talking about more cuts. And in particular, and this is in the Times, talking about welfare cuts. Now, there's a very interesting article as well saying that actually what Labour has done since they have come to power is actually to hit the poorest in society, those people on benefits, the elderly. That isn't normal Labour territory.
It's not, and I think ultimately there's going to be a revolution brewing on the backbenches with Labour MPs, particularly those who got elected last year in July 2024, who certainly did not decide to stand and become a Labour MP and be asked to vote for cuts to the welfare state. And those are the people at the coalface who are going to have to deal with their constituents turning up in their offices or sending emails just going, what the hell are you playing out here? I didn't vote for you to do this. And I think there are some quite novice MPs who will find that really, really difficult. But of course, it doesn't matter in some ways, does it? Because his majority is so big, over 170 MPs. He could afford 50, 60, 70 MPs.
He can.
To rebel, and he can still get his legislation through.
Also, the Prime Minister is at Chequers this weekend, obviously having last-minute meetings, deciding what to do, talking to other world leaders. It's interesting, actually, Benjamin Netanyahu is meeting Trump at the White House tomorrow. They've been hit with 17% levy on Israeli imports to the US. Of course, that is something they're not very happy about. And the question is, what happens from here? Now, Keir Starmer has also said, I will shelter British business from the storm. Now, that is in the Telegraph this morning. This is the front page of the Telegraph. On the right-hand side, if you can see that, the right-hand column there next to, just to remind me I lost money.
But there's an irony to that, isn't there? I'm going to shelter UK business from the storm on the day when the national insurance increase on employers' contribution comes in, and it goes from 13.8% to 15%. That starts today, the beginning of a brand new financial year. Here's the Prime Minister saying, I'm going to look after you. And what he's done is he's clobbered business. And also in today's papers, on the inside pages, you've got loads of examples of particularly people in hospitality, but other business sectors just going, I don't know if I'm going to survive this new financial year.
But we also heard from young people saying they can't get jobs. Well, the reason for that is because people are laying young people off because they cannot afford to pay for them. And of course, if you've got employer national insurance contributions going up, the price of energy and so on.
It's a knock-on effect. And there's a recruitment agency today who've got a piece, I think it's in the Mail, it might be in another paper, just saying that there's a massive freeze on recruitment now. Businesses are just going, we cannot afford to employ new people.
No. And also, I mean, it's quite interesting here in the Telegraph. He says that actually they are going to come up with a series of emergency measures to support companies and to boost growth. Maybe this is the wake-up call.
Maybe.
Because, well, I hope it is, because actually the country cannot take much more of this. And so you're also getting a government pulling in different directions. You've got net zero on one hand. They're also giving the go-ahead to lots of airports in the other. Those two don't make any sense at all. You're cutting welfare. You're strangling business. So where does the growth for the economy
Well, it comes from the private sector, and you and I know this, and I think most viewers and listeners to Talk know this. Growth has always traditionally come from the private sector. It doesn't come from the public sector, because the public sector 9 times out of 10 is not actually making anything, it's providing services, and that's good and that's proper. But don't look to the public sector for growth, look to the private sector. Make it as easy as possible for people who take the risk as entrepreneurs and business owners and operate businesses. Make it as easy as possible for them to generate work, to employ people, to make widgets, and all of that contributes to growth. But we've not seen that so far since this government's been in power.
Duncan, thanks very much for the moment. After the break, I'm going to be talking about some other big stories. This is the Sunday Times. The Kremlin spy sensors have been found in British waters. Also, there's another article in the Express saying we're unprotected against Putin. And in the Daily Mail, it's now reporting that families should prepare a 72-hour survival kit in case of emergencies. And that got me thinking, what keeps you awake at night? Is it the economy? Is it the lack of security in this country or around the world, the global instability? What is it? What keeps you awake at night? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. And this is Weekend Breakfast.
It's a way to make money, unfortunately. I was a fool, man.
Andrew had all sorts of questionable business and advisory dealings, and this was the case, you know, before his fall from grace. There were serious questions about his role as a kind of business envoy. I think having a meeting is very different to offering real support. I mean, how many people does the King meet every day, every week?
Well,
you know, without it, I think it's more it's more a question of, I think, Prince Andrew's judgment, which we didn't exactly have a high opinion of before.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk, 6:25, Sunday, April the 6th. I'm David Bull, joined by Duncan Barks, broadcaster extraordinaire this morning. Good morning. So I asked just now what keeps you awake at night. So I'm expecting sensible answers, like the cost of living, energy insecurity. I'm thinking about national security issues. What keeps me awake at night, this is Alan in Merseyside, is the wife tossing and turning. Thank you for that. Michael says, good morning, David. My missus threatening to put me on the streets on a daily basis. I'm not sure they've got the hang of this yet.
No, but it matters.
But it does matter.
It matters.
It does matter.
Yeah. What keeps you awake at night?
Money.
Money, yeah. Well, I think we're in a really precarious place. I was talking to someone yesterday who made the point, which I don't think some of us have kind of grasped yet, because maybe it's not in our orbit. But if you have, if you've been lucky enough to have a private pension over the years, the markets in the last last week, the last several days, have taken an absolute battering. A lot of people's pensions are tied up in the market.
So that's interesting. Gabriella, the setup producer for this show, she talked about her pension, and that's what's keeping her awake at night. When I said money, I'm worried about interest rates, mortgages, all that kind of stuff, and actually putting food on the table. And it's increasingly difficult to do that. And also the market instability. So if you talk to an IFA about, I'm coming to the end of a mortgage, do I fix, do I not fix? No one has a clue.
They don't know, and you're absolutely right, because again, this is the start of a brand new financial year today, and everything is going up. So I think most people, myself included, will be worried about the bills coming in. Water bills, on average, up 26%. Energy bills, I think it's 6.5%. Council tax has gone through the roof. Most councils across the UK have whacked it up by 4.99%, which is the maximum they can do.
Some 15.
But other ones have been given permission by the government to whack it up even higher.
So we also talked about this. If you have a second property, and lots of couples do, so for example, I gave this this example of, say, a young lady who had a flat in London, then she met a chap in Bath, and then they moved to Bath, for example, and they keep the London flat. Well, now you're going to have to pay another 100% on that council tax. By the way, I've found a way round it.
Go on.
You put the flat on the market and you get an exemption for a year.
Really? Genius.
Thank you.
I noticed reading about this because MPs have got a pay rise that kicks in today. And they're up to, I think it's just under 94 grand a year. They get hit by that council tax levy on their second home. Guess who pays for it?
We do.
We do, the taxpayer.
Yes.
Not breaking any laws, but it's just like, hang on a second, you're earning the best part of 100 grand. Are you telling me you can't just give a little bit more and actually pay this?
It's all wrong.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's really wrong. Let's talk about something else, though, just in terms of keeping us awake at night, and I think we should actually think about this. This is in the Times this morning. It's a big headline in the Times. Kremlin spy sensors found in British waters. We've spoken a lot, actually, about Putin being emboldened, actually encroaching into British waters. We've seen Russian vessels being escorted off by the British Navy. But now, Russian sensors suspected of attempting to spy on the UK's nuclear submarines have been found hidden deep in the seas around Britain. So they found these sensors, the British military found them, they deemed them to be a potential threat to national security. They've never made it public until now. Some of them washed ashore on our shores. Others have been understood to have been located by the Royal Navy. They've been planted by Moscow to gather intelligence on Britain's 4 Vanguard submarines, and they, of course, carry nuclear weapons. Now, as you know, we have a continuous at-sea deterrent, so we always have a nuclear submarine patrolling our waters. And of course, the Kremlin very keen to know the roots of those, and obviously information, knowledge is power, isn't it?
Yep.
A 3-month investigation done by the Times newspaper. They're talking to former defence ministers, senior armed forces personnel, military experts to look at what Russia is absolutely up to. They're also using, according to this report, which is a really good report, super yachts, which are actually reconnaissance ships under the guise of just having a lovely time.
Are you surprised by this at all? Because I'm not surprised.
No.
And I mean, the other part of this investigation, and you're right, it's a brilliant investigation by the Sunday Times, that the UK has discovered Russian unmanned underwater vehicles near deep-sea communication cables. I don't think we should be surprised at this at all.
Not at all.
And I think it further strengthens the view from my perspective, which is that previous governments have really underspent when it comes to defence spending in this country, and it's this kind of stuff that is as a result of that, because we are an island, we are vulnerable in many ways, we need to be protecting our waters, and we're simply not doing it.
Correct. And actually, there's a brilliant map, actually, we'll try and look that up, just the preponderance of cables under the sea. So you've got internet cables, which run under the sea. You've got all of the pipelines, the gas pipelines, for example. Now, in the past 15 months, 11 internet cables in the Baltic Sea have been damaged. Ships are dragging their anchors across the internet cables, knowing full well what they're doing, which is to disrupt communication. And of course, Putin is using these aging tankers to do so. So again, it looks like these tankers are just sort of there in their old fleet, but actually they're not. They're there damaging British national infrastructure.
There's a really interesting paragraph in this Times piece saying senior military figures liken the technological battle for supremacy below the waves to the space race between the US and Soviet Union during the Cold War. And that's what we're seeing. You know, again, because we are an island, we have these cables coming in various ports, various points on our shores, and they need to be protected. And whoever actually can have control and power over those cables, or have the equipment and ability in place to destroy them, it was an act of war, actually, isn't it?
It is.
When you think about it.
It is. There's another article, actually, in the Express this morning as well, saying British towns and cities remain unprotected against Russian missile attacks under our current defence plans. Of course, they're likening it to Israel, the Iron Dome, which obviously is a very effective system indeed. Just in terms of the fact that actually the majority of the United Kingdom is not protected in any sense, and we need to improve that. And they talk about the fact that actually it's just too big. The United Kingdom is actually too big to protect. Now, Patriot systems and missiles are about $1 billion each. Missiles are $4 million each. And so they go on to say, well, if you buy 2 of these, like if you have 2 missiles costing $8 million, where would you place them? This is a great question. Which parts of the UK would you leave out?
Well, nobody wants them in their backyard, do they? I mean, what's interesting is some of us are old enough to remember the kind of like the tail end of the Cold War, right? I don't remember all of it because I'm not that old, but the tail end of it.
Really?
I read about it, David. And what is interesting, and I suspect even now, but during the Cold War, one of the biggest targets in the United Kingdom was Portsmouth, because it's a city, it's where the majority of the Navy is based. So you look at that, and I suspect now that's probably still a legitimate target for some countries because of that reason. But if you were to have some kind of Iron Dome for the UK and you had missiles stationed, you don't want them anywhere near where you live, do you? Because that's what, don't you?
Well, I don't really...
Does that make you a target?
No, I don't think it does necessarily. And also, you see, I live in part of the country where we have big RAF bases or US air bases like Mildenhall, Lakenheath, all the rest of it, Bentwaters. So I don't have a problem with that at all, because you'd think that
so that
was
makes you feel more secure?
It makes me more
that's
secure.
Interesting, OK. As opposed to my slightly pessimistic view, it makes you more of a target.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, it means that we've been napping, as you say, and of course the government has pledged to get to 2.5% of GDP. That is right. I think it needs to go much higher.
It needs to be above 3%, ideally 5%.
5.
But hasn't the last, and it shows you how geopolitics can change so quickly. In the last 2 years, and you said we've been napping, we've been almost sleeping at the wheel, haven't we?
We have.
We've become kind of reliant, particularly with the US.
Totally.
It's OK, this special relationship, if push comes to shove, we can rely on the US to come alongside us and protect us. Well, we can't do that anymore, can we?
No, I also think it's bluster on behalf of the United States too, to make us up our game, and rightly so, in my humble opinion. But yeah, I think we need to do far more, and I think we need to be aware that Russia is an aggressor and means business.
And you see, that gets us into, and it links us back to that story about globalisation has failed and the Starmer thing on the front page of the Sunday Times. I think this country, this is a massive wake-up call.
It is.
In so many ways, because you look at what's happening with Ukraine and Russia, you look at, and you say that how Trump is behaving is a bit of bluster. I like to think it is, but we can't be 100% sure. It really strengthens the argument that more so than ever, the UK needs to be secure when it comes to its own energy. So it needs energy security, food security. We can't rely on, half our food is imported, right? Instead of putting solar panels in fields, we need to be growing more stuff.
Absolutely right. And of course, so they're doing that to increase solar energy, but they're reducing our food security.
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
So if I'm standing for election, which I'm not,
not yet.
Energy security, food security.
I'm very persuasive.
Border security, and I've got a new one this morning, steel security.
Yes.
Right.
But again, they've got rid of the blast furnaces, haven't they? They've put in an electric
Ed Miliband's going, oh no, that's very bad, very bad. We need to be able to generate our own steel. We can't be relying on countries like China.
And also, I need to go to a break. After the break, I want to talk about this, which is in the Daily Mail today, saying Brits should prepare a 72-hour survival kit. This reminds me so vividly of Threads, the drama. Do you remember when we had the real threat of nuclear war, where they actually told us what to do? Do you remember the British government issuing leaflets telling you what to do in the event
Vaguely,
of nuclear
I'm quite young, David.
You are very young. We'll discuss that and more. Also, I'm asking today, what exactly keeps you awake at night? We're getting some very serious answers coming in. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well, at talkTV. Send a carrier pigeon, get in touch however you like. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back. This is Weekend Breakfast 6:37. Duncan was telling me gossip, so that's why. Well, what? Anyway, so just following on from that, there's another article in the Daily Mail today which says fears of a plot by Russia to sabotage Britain's energy pipelines means families should pack a 72-hour survival kit. And obviously this is to do with the fact that everything we've talked about, we're pursuing this net zero nonsense. We're not actually looking after energy security, food security, for example. And they say that we should have a 3-day kit. That should have water in it, non-perishable food, medicines, a battery-powered radio, a torch, identity documents, and a Swiss Army knife. Now, this has enormous resonance for me because when I lived in LA, I did have an emergency survival kit. It was really there for earthquakes, but I had probably 3 days worth of water, which was all in plastic jugs. I also had a torch, a whistle. I had food, which was pre-packaged into these big packs, like protein bars, but massive protein bars. So you had one of those, 2,400 calories for your daily intake. So I took it very seriously in LA, and maybe we need to do that here.
It's scary, isn't it?
It is.
It is scary, and it makes you wonder why this is in a newspaper today. Is there something that we need to be seriously considering? I mean, look, I'm slightly old school. My mother's no longer alive, but she was brought up in Scotland, so she always had stuff in the store cupboard, you know, because if you were brought up in parts of Scotland and you were quite remote,
in a pantry.
She wasn't a pantry, but she had a store cupboard, and you'd have tins of soup in there, non-perishables, because the whole mindset was, well, in Scotland you could be snowed in for 3 days, so you need to be able to eat, and you'd have candles because you need to be able to see things. You might not have electricity. So I kind of have bits of that mindset with me, but this is very specific, isn't it? A 72-hour survival kit, and I don't know what would I have in mind.
Water,
whiskey, a couple of tins of soup.
I mean, you can survive without food, but you can't survive without water.
No.
So water.
But you hear these stories, don't you, about, they call them preppers. Have you heard about preppers? Oh, well, so go on, Google it. So there's I was going to say it's an underground community. I don't know if that's fair, but there is quite a lot of people in this country and indeed around the world who are known as preppers, which is basically based around the word preparation. Prepping that something might happen. I'm not going to sit here this morning on talk and say war is imminent, but something might happen, which means you need to be prepared for it. Yes. And they have like stocks of water, they have stocks of safe rooms, they have all kinds of things going on. It's worth a Google. You go down a rabbit hole, you start looking at preppers. I mean, it's a massive, massive area. And there are people who have got stuff that means they can survive for 3 or 4 months at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back to the days of threats, the threat of nuclear war, for example. If you remember, that leaflet came round that basically said you basically need to hide under a table in a cupboard. I mean, it was not going to do much in a nuclear war, is it?
Well, I was Googling whilst you were saying, I wasn't being rude.
I did wonder what you were doing. I was like, are you in the room?
I am in the room. You know I'm in the room. But I wanted to just make sure I had the right title. So I remember quite clearly there was this animated disaster film called When the Wind Blows. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember.
That's what I'm looking at here, is When the Wind Blows, which was an animated film about a rural couple attempts to survive a nearby nuclear attack. And when I was a kid, so that was 1986 that it came out, and it was voiced by John Mills and Peggy Ashcroft. I mean, too, you know, in the world of theatre and, you know, royalty. So I would have been in my early teens, and I remember watching that and being quite terrified at the time, When the Wind Blows. And what we're seeing this morning in some of the papers, this idea, particularly in the Mail on Sunday, you need a 72-hour survival kit, has echoes of that, doesn't it?
It does. So, Threads, which I was talking about, was made in 1984, an apocalyptic war drama, which frightened the pants off me. So 69, 79, so I was 15. And if you remember, do you remember this?
Yes.
That you had people and the nuclear explosion went off, and then people's faces fell off and all the rest of it. They got radiation sickness. I mean, it terrified me for years. And of course, as you say, I think we need to be very aware that actually the world is a very unstable place. Let's move on and talk about something else. Not good news for the Labour Party. This is on the front page of the Mail and also the Mirror, various other papers. I saw it late last night. This is a Labour Member of Parliament being arrested on suspicion of rape and child sex offences. This is Dan Norris. He is a former minister. He's also the MP for North East Somerset, which he won from Jacob Rees-Mogg, if you remember.
Yes.
I think with 5,000, majority of 5,000 or thereabouts. He was arrested. He was taken into custody after police raided his constituency home on Friday. He previously worked as a teacher, a child protection officer. He's been suspended from the Labour Party. There is an outcome, pending the outcome of the police investigation. The party spokesman confirmed the arrest, saying Dan Norris MP was immediately suspended by the Labour Party upon being informed of his arrest. We cannot comment further, and rightly so. Now, I've just got to do this carefully. Now, Avon and Somerset Police said it is investigating a series of allegations against a man in his 60s. It said most of the offences are alleged to have occurred in the 2000s, but added it was also investigated an alleged offence of rape from the 2020s. A spokesman for the police said in December 2024 we received a referral from another police force relating to alleged non-recent child sex offences having been committed against a girl. Most of those do come from the 2000s, but one of those comes the alleged offence of rape from the 2020s. This is an investigation led by officers within Operation Bluestone. Our dedicated rape and serious sexual assault investigation team remains ongoing and at an early stage. The victim is being supported and given access to specialist help or support she needs. And they go further to say a man aged in his 60s was arrested on Friday on suspicion of sexual offences against a girl under the Sexual Offences Act of 1956, rape under the Sexual Offences Act of 2003, child abduction and misconduct in public office. He's been released on conditional bail for inquiries to continue. This is an active and sensitive investigation. We respectfully ask people not to speculate on the circumstances so our inquiries can continue unhindered. So obviously that is all I can say.
Yeah.
It is an ongoing investigation.
Yeah.
It's not good news for the Labour Party. Dependent on the outcome of that, I think it's fair to say it might lead to a by-election in that constituency. Don't forget, of course, this comes on the back of Mike Amesbury.
Yes.
Do you remember in Runcorn?
Yeah.
Where he had 6 or 7 pints, I believe, was in a pub. There was an altercation in the street, and he confronted the constituent by punching them in the face, was then obviously stood down. There is now a by-election on the 1st of May. Not good for Labour.
No, and it's not good for politics in general,
not.
is it? Because, I mean, I'm not going to comment on this particular case with Dan Norris, but I will make the observation, and we can with Mike Amesbury because he pleaded guilty, and obviously the by-election is on the 1st of May.
Yeah.
It does get us into that whole area about the kind of people who might want to stand for election, the vetting process, that gets us into the whole area. And also a very simple thing, I think, which is quite simply, if you're, and particularly the case of Mike Amesbury, who rightly in the end stood down, but it took a while.
Quite right.
Let's be honest about this. It took several weeks for him to go, actually, I'm quitting. That you cannot have people who are responsible for making the law, breaking the law.
Agreed.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this investigation. But you're right, it is potentially another headache for Keir Starmer this morning.
It is. It would be interesting, actually, if there is a by-election there, of course, in Somerset. And as I said, Jacob Rees-Mogg last held that.
Yes.
He won. So Dan Norris won by 5,000 votes. Obviously, that was when Labour was in its ascendancy. And it would be, if there was a by-election, it would be interesting. I don't know where the other parties sit in terms of Somerset, but I would have thought it was traditionally quite conservative.
You would have thought so, though, of course, in the last election, the Lib Dems did quite well in the southwest, didn't they, in various seats. So I don't know enough about the constituency. Just to add a little bit of light relief to this particular story, if I may, you mentioned Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I did.
I caught on TV...
Have you seen it?
The Rees-Moggs, the documentary.
I've not seen it.
Oh, my word.
Is it good?
It is so good. It is compulsive.
Is it? So tell us.
Well, it was on one of the... I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I don't have a Sky box. I have a Freeview box. And I was flicking around a couple of nights ago. I admit, after a couple of glasses of Rioja, just thinking, is there anything worth watching? And it came up on one of these channels called Quest.
Oh, right.
And I hesitate to describe it as a fly-in-the-wall documentary because I think some of it is quite contrived. But I have to say that this, and I know it's a bit dated, it's been out for several months now, but it takes me a bit of time to find these things. But I became addicted to it. It is compulsive. I forget her name, but the star is his wife. She is fantastic.
Really?
She is no nonsense. She's got a great wit about her. It's hilarious.
But you can tell that from the way he behaves and his demeanour and manner, can't you?
But his wife is...
Is she like him?
Oh, she's better.
Is she as posh?
Yeah, she's as posh. It's really funny. You've got to watch it.
Okay.
You've got to watch it.
And it's called At Home with the Rees-Moggs,
That's
I think,
it,
isn't it?
It is brilliant. And once you start watching it, you can't stop watching it. and of course, he lives with his nanny, who brought him up as a kid. And she's the nanny to their children as well.
Oh, wow.
So there's this lovely old lady, and it's quite warm in places.
Is it?
But for me, it's not about Jacob Rees-Mogg, it's his wife, who's
Helena.
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 Fantastic.
So she's the matriarch.
She's just hilarious. She should run for election.
OK, well, we'll let her know. Duncan, thanks for the moment. I'm asking this morning, what keeps you awake at night? It's deliberately open-ended, that question, so you can answer it in any way that you like. David, good morning, says Lee in Birmingham. I've just been awakened by my bins being emptied. That's on a Sunday.
What, in Birmingham?
In Birmingham?
Oh.
You're the only one. Yeah. You're the only one. It's not the bins being emptied, is it? It's going to be some sort of raccoon or badger that's emptying your bin. Also, good morning, David. It's worth boiling lots of water, then freezing it for later. Great show. That's Dave in Colne.
Oh.
So that's a good one,
That's a good
actually.
tip.
Very good tip. You need another freezer.
You do.
Don't you?
You do.
Blocks of ice.
Blocks of ice.
Which become water. Lots of others coming in as well. What keeps me awake at night, David? This is Carol in sunny Lowestoft. What keeps me awake at night is this Labour government destroying our country minute by minute with mass immigration, wasting money abroad and on rubbish here when we need it right here in this country. The economy has tanked. Everything is just hideous. At 65, I truly fear for the future. Great show. Thank you, Carol. We'll continue with all of the front pages. I'll bring you up to speed with everything you need to know after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
It's a way to make money, unfortunately. It's a drama which is being used to make money, and they're going to bring it into the education system, and they're going to make young boys, mainly young boys, watch this show who probably never even had the thoughts about committing such crimes or never even knew what an incel was. The way I see it is it's propaganda.
Well, that's more than to make money. It's a way to bring in laws and go start and go, look what's happened. We'll bring in this law to stop this fake thing.
I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:52. Right, this is from Sarah in Wrexham, on holiday in Amalfi. Oh, lovely. I'm very jealous. Hi, David. I remember Threads 2. It still haunts me, remembering it as a young teenager, you see, Duncan. The power of those dramas when you're growing up and you've got a developing brain. I mean, I was talking to my brother about it. He's also haunted by that particular drama.
I think a lot of people are.
Yeah. I'd like to see it again. Or maybe I don't.
No, no, I don't think you do.
No, I probably don't. Lots of other messages coming in. Good morning, David. More lammy ignorance. China has been flooding us with cheap tat imports for at least 50 years. I don't buy as I don't approve. That's Anne in North London. Keep these coming in. Good morning, David. Philip in Poole. What keeps me awake, David, is how the country I grew up in no longer exists. thanks to mass immigration. We talked a great deal about this yesterday, actually, about the way people are living in silos. And it's just a bugbear of mine. In East London, I see people who are so culturally distinct that stick to their cultural groups and their language. They don't integrate. They don't speak English. And we just blindly go by. And I do think somehow we have to say, this is not acceptable.
I think I have two thoughts on this. First off, I have no problem with people coming to live in this country.
Neither do I.
As long as they do it in a legal way. I have a lot of issues with people who come to this country illegally. But I have no problem with people coming to live in this country, right? But you need to make every effort to integrate. And that means learning how to speak the language, understanding that we have certain laws for certain reasons in this country. Culturally, we behave in a certain way. And I think there is an issue that's been allowed to... We've actually in some ways been the architects here of where we find ourselves, because we are predominantly a fair and tolerant nation. People have been taking the mick, and we've allowed them to take the mick. I don't think I said anything particularly controversial there.
No.
So
how do you reverse it?
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can reverse it. That's the problem. Because we are a fair and tolerant nation. You know, Britain as a whole is a fair country. You know, we are quite fair to people, and we give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think certainly, I mean, to delve in a bit more detail, I blame the Blair government for starting this in 1997. I think there was a mindset change in this country where, if you or I were, well, look, I saw it working in the media at the time. If you dared to express any concerns about immigration, you were automatically branded some kind of awful person who was racist. And that would be going as far as to say, oh, quite a lot of people coming to this country and they're not integrating, racist. You know, and that shut down the debate, which is dangerous, because all that does is take extremism to a lower, it puts it underground. That's what that does. If you stop allowing people to talk about it by shutting them down, it doesn't go away, it hides, it goes somewhere else. And since that period from 1997 to 2010, it is increased, and consequently we live in a country now which is, I believe, divided. And you used the word earlier, silos, and we have silos.
We do.
In London and in most cities around the United Kingdom.
Do you think it's acceptable to walk around major cities with your face completely covered?
It doesn't personally offend me or worry me. It doesn't personally do that, but I don't see people in those communities doing a great deal to integrate in any other way. There you go, that's a politician's answer.
It is a politician's answer. So how do you get them to integrate?
I don't know. I can't. Increasingly, I do find myself thinking that ship has sailed.
Well, so it's just a question I ask myself the whole time, because I see it the whole time.
All right. So I think we've shifted as a country, haven't we? And maybe we've got a different kind of immigration, because I remember being a child who grew up in the 70s. You know, I had schoolmates whose parents had come predominantly from Commonwealth countries, who had come to work in the NHS, who'd come to work in London Transport in some cases, you know, and there was the integration was there. And it sounds like a cliche, but I'm going to give it as an example, that they would be proud to have a picture of the Queen in their home, right? You don't have that now, do you?
You don't.
So what has changed? Why do we not have that kind of mindset where I come and live in someone else's country and I want to be part of that country? Because that doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't. But then it may be the countries they're coming from. As you mentioned, of course, Commonwealth countries share commonality.
True,
they share
very true.
a shared history, values, language, for example. But other people coming from other countries don't have those. It's a big debate, actually. We could open that out as well.
I just don't know where it's going to end up. And it's not about being nasty to people because of the country they come from or their skin colour. But I think there's a very basic approach to human nature, and I do it. If I go and visit another country, I try and make sure I'm aware of what the customs are. My wife will do the same. You know, we go to somewhere where a woman should be covered up. If she goes to a place of worship, my wife will do that, because that's the right and proper thing to do, because you acknowledge that's what that particular country does. But we don't seem to have people who have come to live here permanently with that mindset.
But is it our fault? Because actually we've been so passive in this process process that we haven't actually said, I'm really sorry, do you mind actually integrating and behaving as the rest of us do in this country? So therefore, isn't it our fault as well?
Possibly.
And we're so worried about being politically correct that we don't want to do it.
We are worried. You could probably hear the hesitancy in my voice. I'm choosing my words really carefully because we live in a country where some people might be offended with what you said and what I said, but thankfully here on Talk we can have this conversation, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
But it's the conversation that's happening in pubs.
It is.
And so if you don't have that conversation in the public, it drives it underground. So, and that is more worrying to me.
It is, because you'd end up with extremist parties, which we don't want. So the example that I find really interesting is when you have interpreters in the NHS, okay? You want someone who, when they go to the NHS, to be able to communicate effectively and be properly understood, right? That's what a decent country should do. But that should be the exception, not the norm, that you automatically provide someone who's there to be an interpreter. Because all that does is just increase that idea, which is, well, I don't need to learn the language.
Well, 100%, and of course the cost that's implicated as well as a result of that. Duncan, thank you very much for the moment.
Thank you.
I promise we will go through all of this morning's front pages. We will do that after this break. Don't go anywhere. Lots more still to come here on a Weekend Breakfast. Can't wait to see you after this break. A very good morning to all of you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you, just after 7 o'clock, Sunday, April the 6th. I'm David Bull, and this is a Weekend Breakfast. I'm very unhappy today because I lost loads of money in the Grand National. I think I'm over-egging the pudding here, actually. I lost £30. Anyway, I blame Steve Denyer from Virgin Radio for egging me on. Anyway, great news today. The Brighton Marathon is taking place this morning, actually. This obviously takes place in the Sussex Seaside Resort. Amazingly, over 10,000 people are running for charity. That's extraordinary. The biggest marathon in the UK is, of course, London. That has over 50,000 runners. That is on the 27th of this month. By the way, Duncan, I can't get a hotel room for that weekend. They're far too expensive. And those of you running the Brighton Marathon, very good luck to you. Also today, it's Tartan Day today, a day showcasing the rich tapestry of Scottish heritage, culture and traditions. It commemorates the signing of the Declaration of Arbroath. Yes, and that happened in 1320. Haggis all round, that's what I say. Also, it's New Beer's Eve. That's right, today marks the day in the United States, the day before the end of Prohibition. It's a reminder that we're free to enjoy beer, and we must do so.
Yes.
Promptly.
But I got a beer in my hand. But I got a beer in my hand. But I got a beer in my hand.
Oh, very good. I'm jealous. Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So, some new ones for you this hour. On this day in 1812, British forces under the command of the Duke of Wellington assaulted the fortress of Badajoz in Spain. It was the turning point in the Peninsular War against Napoleon-led France. On this day, in 1843, William Wordsworth, of course, remember him, the English poet? He was appointed Poet Laureate a day before his 73rd birthday. And here, on this very day in 1944, this is less fun, PAYE, pay-as-you-earn income tax, was introduced into Britain. It was devised by an evil man called Cornelius Gregg. And those are this house fascinating facts.
Weekend breakfast, feeling so alive. David and Duncan, let the good times thrive. The full team's here. Who could ask for more?
Well, a very good morning to you. 7:05 on Sunday, April the 6th. The sun is out. It looks like spring. Well, we can't see it, actually, can we?
We can drink beer tomorrow.
We can drink beer.
Oh,
and we're joined by Duncan Barks, broadcaster extraordinaire. So we can drink beer, sit in the sun.
Yeah. What kind of beer drinker are you?
A really good one.
What kind of beer?
Well, it depends.
Oh.
It depends.
Yes.
So in the summer, lager.
Yes.
In the winter, a nice bitter, and I have to give a shout out to Adnams, which is in my neck
Love
of the woods.
Adnams.
Do you? Yes.
Yeah. I like Hophead.
Do you?
Yeah. It's a beer.
Is that a beer?
This is made by the Dark Star Brewery. And also, shout out to the Langham Brewery, which is in West Sussex, which is my part of the world. What? It's a local business.
Yes.
They need.
Well, the same is true of Adnams.
All of our businesses need supporting.
They do, and Adnams make a lovely gin as well, Copperhouse, which I
I've seen
which
that.
I served at my 50th.
Okay.
People were very had a great time.
Yeah. I might drink some beer later.
And obviously, I have to say, drink responsibly.
And gamble responsibly.
Yes. Do you know I'm going home for the first time in 2 weeks today?
Right.
I'm very excited about the whole thing.
That's good. Do you have a local pub?
Here's the thing. So we're fighting to get the pub reopened because it was bought by someone, and we're now in the middle of a big inquiry into it. So that's a sore point. So thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry, I just thought you might want to enjoy.
No, we do. We
drinking
do have some great pubs actually.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And it's lovely in the summer in the sun.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've moved away from what we're meant to be talking about. Let's take you through this morning's front pages, shall we? Front page of The Observer. Starmer orders economic reset amid the Trump tariff mayhem. Now, Keir Starmer is preparing to rethink key elements of the government's economic policy in an emergency response to Donald Trump's tariff blitz amidst growing concern in Downing Street that the US president's trade war could do lasting damage to the United Kingdom. He goes further to say that old assumptions should be discarded in the UK's response, suggesting he and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, may put taxes up again, despite repeatedly promising not to do so. What a convenient excuse. He also is sort of hinting that they may actually change their fiscal rules. If you remember, that is something else. Ironclad, Rachel Reeves, where she basically fiddled the figures so that she got the same fiscal headroom so that she could actually stand up at the spring statement and say she'd actually managed to deliver. Almost $5 trillion was wiped off the value of the global stock markets after Trump launched those tariffs. The FTSE 100 closed down on Friday, more than 7% lower than on Monday. Now, last night there was a sort of, the story moved on because Jaguar Land Rover last night said it's pausing shipments to the US.
Yeah.
25% on all of their exports. There's a hell of a lot.
Yeah, you've also got Rolls-Royce as well, haven't you, who manufacture cars, again, down on the south coast. It is a worrying time for companies who base their manufacturing, their car manufacturing, in this country.
And of
don't know where it's going to end up.
Well, then they're talking about, well, do we actually have plants in the United States and then we manufacture those cars in the United States, so we circumvent those tariffs? I mean, I'm still hopeful that we get some sort of free trade deal.
I think so. So here's my theory. Have I got time to explain my theory regarding this? Not about pubs or beers. My theory is this. I think so there was the skeleton of a trade deal that the Conservatives worked on, and some Conservative politicians in the last few weeks were like, oh well, Labour, you know, with these tariffs coming out, you've only got yourself to blame. You should have really worked at pace to finish this trade deal. My theory is this. I think we will get a trade deal. And I think it will be signed when Trump comes to this country later this year. I think it's July is the month he's coming. That's my theory.
Why?
Because it looks good and it works for everyone. That's what I think.
And what is the quid pro quo? What do we have to give up?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there'll be issues with this because farmers, for example, have concerns about
chlorinated chicken
and cheap beef coming over from America, and our farming businesses and communities in this country already being pummeled because of the inheritance tax changes. So there might be that. We also know that there's this rumour doing the rounds that this tax on digital companies may well slowly just fade away.
I think
there are a couple of things there, but I do think, from an optics point of view, it works for everyone, doesn't it? Trump comes here, he's on a state visit, he meets King Charles, and then there's this big kind of bun fight and this signing of a free trade agreement between the UK and US. That's my theory. Do you want to wager a fiver?
No, I think it's a good theory, actually. Is it at that meeting, which is the scoping meeting for the state visit, or is it at the state visit?
Oh, it's definitely when he comes here as part of the state visit.
All right, all right. We'll have a bet. Also, this is the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Starmer vows to shelter the UK from Trump tariff storms. I don't know what this means. JP Morgan now saying there's a 60% chance of a global recession. Barclays cutting UK growth forecast this year from 0.7% to 0.5%. Donald Trump defending the tariffs, saying we will win. Downing Street now looking to water down tariffs on electric vehicles, or the level of electric vehicles that have to be produced by car firms in this country. So they could also reform regulation that will cut red tape, give targeted tax breaks to help struggling sectors. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean a change to the national insurance contributions or not?
Well, I don't think
she can't go back.
She won't U-turn on that. They'll find another way of doing it. But the overarching thing here, just listening to you go through the front pages regarding some of the tariff stuff and the economy stuff, what Trump has given the Labour government is an opportunity now to almost rewrite their economic policy and just say, oh, it's because of the tariffs.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter if it's a change to the fiscal rules, because of the tariffs. It doesn't matter if it's increased taxation.
So we're no longer blaming the Tory administration, we're now blaming Trump.
Well, I don't think they'd go out and blame Trump, but it's a reason to go out to the electorate and say, I know we said...
So here's the thing, they already know they've really mucked up.
Yeah.
So if they use this, they could then say, actually, with due consideration and based on the premise of what Trump has now done, this is what we're going to do. So actually, politically, there is manoeuvre room.
Oh, absolutely.
To do something.
Yeah, and they've already started doing that with Ukraine, haven't they? With the defence spending. Oh, we've decided to do this. We have to make cuts here because we're going to have to put some money into defence spending. It's the same approach and tactic, isn't it?
It is. Let's move on and talk about the Sunday Times. Same story here. Starmer to admit globalisation has failed as the tariff war rages. He's going to say globalisation has failed. It's failed millions of voters as the fallout from the tariffs from Trump. He and the Chancellor are going to make pro-growth announcements, including easing regulations on electric car manufacturers, bringing forward parts of the government's industrial strategy, whatever that is, and we'll find out what that is in the next few days. Then we talked about this underneath. Kremlin spy sensors found in British waters. Russian sensors suspected of attempting to spy on the UK's nuclear submarines have been found hidden in the seas around Britain. This is about a real threat to national security. We talked at length about this earlier on. Let's move to the Mail now, front page. Starmer rocked as MP held in rape and child abuse probe. It's actually in all the papers. It's also front page on the Sunday Telegraph as well. This goes on to say Keir Starmer was rocked last night by the arrest of one of his MPs on suspicion of rape and child sex offences. Dan Norris, a former Labour minister, who ousted Jacob Rees-Mogg with a majority of 5,000 at the last election for North East Somerset, was taken into custody. Police have raided his constituency home. That happened on Friday. Now, he trained as a child protection officer with the NSPCC. He's worked as a teacher as well. We can't say very much about it as it's an ongoing investigation, can we? But apparently 6 unmarked cars arrived on Friday. They parked blocking the drive of the neighbour. This is a testimonial from the neighbour. He is also, by the way, Dan Norris, is also Metro Mayor for the West of England.
I noticed that as part of the piece.
How can you do both?
Well, that's what I was going to ask, which that seems like an awful lot of work. And I mean, I don't know his work in detail, but one must make the observation that can you do the job effectively if you hold both roles?
No, I would say.
There's a couple of big briefs across your desk, isn't it?
It is. Sunday Mirror, also same story. Labour MP's child sex and rape arrest. Obviously an ongoing investigation, as I say. Sunday Express, we talked about this as well. The UK Iron Dome won't protect us from Putin. An Iron Dome would not protect British towns and cities from missile attacks if targeted by Russia. As tensions continue to mount with Moscow, calls have been increasing for the UK to replicate the Iron Dome from Israel. And they're talking about, obviously, the Iron Dome works very well. It repels about 90% of the missiles that are fired towards Israel. But they're saying a multi-layered system like this would be too prohibitively expensive to adopt here. And this is as the Chief of Defence Staff, Admiral Sir Tony Radakin, met with Ukrainian and French counterparts in Kyiv to coordinate military planning of a multinational force. A bit of light relief. Let's move to the Sun on Sunday. I'm the only judge on Strictly. This is Craig Revel-Horwood. Strictly's Craig Revel-Horwood has taken aim at his co-stars, insisting he's the only judge that matters, Duncan. The barb-tongue dance whiz right shocked a live audience on tour when he blasted "There is no other judge. I created it." Did you?
I'm really out of my comfort zone.
Are you?
Anything
Would
Strictly.
you do Strictly?
Of course I wouldn't do Strictly.
Oh, I would.
Would you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you need to get on the phone.
Yeah, I know. Sequence the
You'd
whole
be
lot.
good at it.
I would actually really enjoy it.
You're very athletic and
That's
nimble.
very kind.
You know, I'm just a lump.
That's all that beer, isn't it?
And cheese.
And cheese.
I know, it's terrible.
Cheese and beer, Gromit.
I go to the gym twice a week.
Do you?
Yeah.
What do you do there? Eat?
Oh, I do afterwards, yeah.
Yeah. I have to go to the gym, actually. That's the problem with being on tour.
Yeah.
On tour. You just can't go to the gym, you can't do anything, and then you tend to eat terrible things.
I'll have you know, I do it to build up strength in my upper body and my legs because I have slightly dodgy hips. So I do the old cycling and I do the weights.
Well done.
But I just
I was saying to you earlier, I want to start cycling again.
Right.
Because the weather's improved, it's nice to do. I'm a mammal, a middle-aged man in
you're
lycra.
not, are you?
I am.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what?
I'll
in
send you a
Suffolk,
picture. Yeah.
What kind of picture? Racing
of
around
me in my lycra on my bike.
Lycra,
yeah.
With your mates.
Yeah.
Taking up all of the lanes, four abreast.
Yes. No, I go with my brother.
Two abreast.
It's really nice, actually. No, so we chat away, and I, you know, spend quality time with my brother. Yeah. No.
No. In my part of the world,
I was going to buy you some lycra.
They block up all of the lanes, all of the villages. You can't overtake them. It's a nightmare.
Sunday People, Blight Lotus. Yeah, this is interesting, which is... have you seen The White Lotus?
No.
Oh, it's really good. You've got to watch it.
What is it in a sentence?
It's really good. It's a drama.
Right.
It's based. The first series is based in a hotel, and it's about the guests that they have in the hotel.
Oh, okay.
It's a really but it's a dysfunctional manager of that hotel and what goes on.
Yeah.
And it includes drugs.
Right.
Okay. And that's the link into this, which is basically, apparently, according to this, see pages 4 and 5. Brits are running cannabis empires on the same island where White Lotus was filmed. This is in Koh Samui. It's become a magnet for drug dealing lowlifes after Thailand relaxed its drug laws. 12 Brits were caught at the local airport in just 5 days last month, smuggling 400 kilos of cannabis to the UK, Germany, Singapore and Hong Kong.
Wow.
Wow. The police also seized £6 million worth of cannabis at Thai airports. More than 50 Brits were arrested and charged before being held in hellhole prisons for trying to bring cannabis into the UK. They legalised cannabis in 2022. Smuggling it is still punishable by 10 years in jail. It's the first country to decriminalise dope in Southeast Asia.
You don't want to end up in a Thai nick, do you?
No, you really don't.
No. Well, where do you stand then on drugs in this country? Because I take the view, I mean, I'm quite happy to... look, my drugs of choice are caffeine...
beer,
red wine, and occasionally a nice cigar, but not as much as I used
cheese.
To. It's not a drug, David. When I was a student, you know, I dabbled in herbal jazz cigarettes, to use a phrase, but it doesn't remotely interest me now. But I've reached a conclusion. We might as well just legalise it in this country, because I can walk down any street in Britain, in any town, and I can smell it.
So I don't think my view is particularly controversial, but I think we should decriminalise all drugs. There is a difference between decriminalisation and legalisation. The thing is that we know about 1 million kids take drugs every single week, and that's probably an underestimation.
Yeah.
So kids will take drugs. Alcohol, very expensive, right? So the kids take drugs.
Yes.
So they take drugs to a nightclub.
Yeah.
They have no idea what they're taking.
True.
And so there are some very forward-thinking places where they will actually look at your drugs, test your drugs, and tell you what it is. So I would much rather that the kids are kept safe by being told what is in there. Now, also, if you provide safe supplies of drugs, you can then tax them.
Yep.
Which obviously would give you revenue, and at the same time you look after people. Now then, the question I have morally is then where do you stop? So do you then say, well, we're going to decriminalise heroin?
Well, this is it, isn't it? Because in various states in America, California included, they have they've legalised marijuana, and you can buy it, can't you? You can buy it in shops, basically.
You have to have a prescription, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think you do. So, but the prescription comes from someone in a shop who has a board outside saying it will help your headache, your otitis media, your whatever.
But the point I wanted to get to was, therefore, you buy it over the counter.
Yeah.
It's taxed, I believe.
Yes.
And I read a report a while ago saying that tax money in one particular US state is used to help build schools, which is kind of interesting. But also goes back to your point that actually whatever people are buying is, to use the phrase, quality controlled. You know what it is. So you're absolutely right. If you were to go down that route, shouldn't we do it for all kinds of drugs?
But you see, also, the war on drugs doesn't work. We know that. So, and then when you've got people like David Nutt, Professor David Nutt, who was head of the committee advisory on drugs, and he said the classification of drugs is all wrong because they're in different categories, A, B and C. Yeah. Dependent, it's meant to be on how dangerous they are. It bears no resemblance to how dangerous they are. And I don't want for this to be an advertorial, but there are certain drugs that are much safer than others, and that's what David Nutt said. He reported back to the government and they fired him because they didn't want to hear it.
No, but maybe you've just thrown Rachel Reeves a lifeline. Rachel from accounts, if you're listening, here you are, legalise certain drugs, tax it.
Well, so we now allow cannabis for medical use, but you have to be prescribed by a professional doctor, and there's a very strict criteria. And I have very good evidence to show it is incredibly effective for people with intractable epilepsy, for example. We need to start thinking about a lot of these natural chemicals that exist.
I'm going to have to speak very carefully. I know of people who have got quite advanced arthritis and they self-medicate. Using certain things which would
under chronic pain.
In the eyes of the law would be classed as illegal if they were found with it. So I think maybe we need to review it. I've always thought we need a royal commission on this. It's long overdue.
as long as it doesn't take ages to report back. So that's Blight Lotus, that's the Sunday People. By the way, Duncan, this is Jasmine, the White Lotus is fab too. Duncan, you must watch that on Sky Atlantic. Daily Star, finally, you're not going out like that. Great picture on the Daily Star. A quarter of Brits have fallen out with their partner over their dress sense, according to a poll. Do you know the worst offender for blokes? Do you know what that is?
It's sandals, isn't it?
Sandals and socks.
Yeah.
Who does sandals and socks?
I certainly don't.
No. Also, cowboy boots, 80-style shoulder pads, T-shirts with cheeky or offensive logos. Don't like those at all.
Well, you're not 12, are you?
No,
you shouldn't be wearing
12.
a T-shirt.
You shouldn't really be wearing that. Men are more likely to be embarrassed by what their partner is wearing. So there you are. Your partner can really upset you by what they're wearing.
Well, I'm never upset with what the current Mrs. Barks wears, but she's very vocal about what I wear. I took the dog for a walk on Friday. I had a pair of, because it was quite a warm day on the Sussex Riviera, so I had a pair of cut-down jeans. Right. So like, kind of like jeans.
Sounds wrong.
And I had a lumberjack shirt on. I was taking the dog for a walk. She went, "You're not going out like that, are you?" I'm only going up the road.
What colour were the jeans? Blue?
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I had her point was, because I had a lumberjack shirt, she said, "Why are you wearing a long-sleeved shirt with a pair of effectively shorts?" So I just rolled my sleeves up.
Well done, Duncan. And did she? Did that solve the problem?
Well, I mean, she didn't have to walk the dog, so...
Right, Duncan, thanks for the moment. Keep all your messages coming in, please. I'm asking what keeps you awake at night. It's a deliberately open-ended question, that one. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your messages to 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. Also, after the break, we're going to tell you some more of the stories that are making the headlines, but also I want to show you some postbox toppers which have actually made they've made an appearance once again. So thank you very much for people for sending those in. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes.
That was Russell Brand's response to those charges. He went further, stating there was so little trust in the British government that levels of corruption are unprecedented. I'm talking specifically to you in the UK.
Andrew had all sorts of questionable business and advisory dealings, and this was the case, you know, before his fall from grace. There were serious questions about his role as a kind of business envoy. I think having a meeting is very different to offering real support. I mean, how many people does the King meet every day, every week?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Pete the Mole says one of the worst fashion crimes, I don't know how we got here, but one of the worst fashion crimes in men are three-toe shoes. What? Right? They're pointy shoes, so narrow you would only be able to wear them if you have 3 toes. That's what I wear.
Do they have bells on the end?
My dad used to call them winkle pickers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning, David. Great show as always. When are you going to do some bumper stickers like Mike Graham? What a brilliant idea. How about I get up in the morning with the doctor?
I like that.
Yeah?
That's good. I'll tell you what, I've got one here on Twitter, or X. Mr. Watchman has got in contact saying, I think we now have a new name for you, David, by your own admission. I think this is down to your cycling exploits. Captain Spandex.
Love that.
So you could have I get up with Captain Spandex every morning.
There we are. We'll put in an order for all the stickers now. Let's take a call now. Stephen is in, sunny Maria in Spain. Good morning.
Good morning, David and Duncan.
Lovely to talk to you again. Now, don't tell me the weather's fabulous, right, over there?
Oh, it's always fabulous here, David.
That's not true. That's not true. I've been there when it's rained.
Yeah, it does rain in Spain.
It does rain in Spain. So what's on your mind this morning?
Well, David, it's always the economy. All these issues with Russia and all these other diversions are what the politicians seem to want to avoid dealing with the debt crisis we're all in. You know, this latest thing about Russia and stocking your larder up with food and all the rest of it, we've all lived through the 1970s. Duncan was talking about it yourself. The 8-minute warning, you know, get under a table, stay away from windows. It's all a load of rubbish.
Wow.
Basically, it's the cost of living that matters. That's what we. And there was graffiti on a wall in France I noticed not so long ago, and it said, "Your comfort zone will kill you," in English. So clearly, what's happening is a lot of people are sort of comfortable at the moment, but they're not prepared for the economic mess that's going to hit us.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I get the sense when you read in between the lines in the newspapers that clearly the government is now thinking about what they do next economically, financially. Is it new tax cuts? Is this a way for Rachel Reeves actually to renege on some of the stuff she was going to do? I mean, they've got themselves into a right mess over this. So, they were, at best, disingenuous about employers' national insurance contribution. The VAT on private schools has backfired massively, and that's subject to that High Court case which is going on at the moment. We're seeing inflation going up. They have no idea what to do. They're talking now about possibly, and this was last night, saying actually there may be 4 interest rate cuts this year as a result of the turmoil on the global markets, but no one really knows. What should she do?
I think at the end of the day, we need a return of capital controls. I get mocked for this time and again, but you won't be told. But when an emergency comes along, they will lock the doors to keep what wealth remains in the UK in the UK. We all grew up with them in the 70s and early 80s. You couldn't take money out more than £150 with your passport. If you were a business, you had to get a licence from the government to move money abroad. I think that's what's coming back, capital controls.
You made a really interesting point there, Stephen, about debt, because, I mean, we found out, didn't we, when Rachel Reeves did her spring statement / emergency budget, depending on your viewpoint, that we are paying £105.5 billion a year in interest just to service the UK debt, which is an extraordinary amount of money. And at some point, it's all going to go pop, surely.
Yeah, and what I can't understand is why does HMRC allow people like Duncan Ballantyne, who makes money out of his gym in the UK, take the wealth tax-free to a tax shelter like Monaco or somewhere else where he happens to live? Surely we should make sure that any wealth generated in the UK is taxed in the UK.
Well, actually, there's a much bigger issue here. I can't comment on the individual tax affairs of any individual, but the issue is actually, aren't we taxing the people who are super successful so they leave the country? What we should be doing is incentivising those SMEs, and they are the backbone of the British economy, incentivising them, saying, because you've put your money where your mouth is, we're going to lower your tax so that you actually can grow your business, employ people. It's so regressive what we do currently.
Yeah, I agree that it's regressive, but it's taken decades to get here. It's going to decades to turn it around.
Well, does it? Or does it need a new approach? You need to have someone going in there saying that actually we believe in Britain, we are now a sovereign free democracy, we can do what we want, we can set our own tax laws because we are now finally out of the EU.
Okay, but Duncan made a point there. There's 105 billion in interest payments on the debt accumulated so far. You can't escape that without defaulting.
No.
So somewhere along the line, we need these capital controls. It's going to be painful. Somebody's got to pay for all the decades of debt-fueled consumption.
Just picking up, David, on what you said, I was just looking up some figures on the amount of millionaires who are leaving the country. The Adam Smith Institute found that 10,800 millionaires decided to go and live elsewhere last financial year, which is double the number from the previous year.
Exactly.
So, you know, when you start penalising people who have wealth or have created wealth or whatever, they don't just take it on the chin. They just go, I'm not putting up with this anymore.
Of course.
I'm going. And then those figures speak for themselves.
And they close their companies, they relocate the companies abroad, and of course then you lose the revenue.
We're chasing these people away.
We certainly are. Really good to talk to you, Steve, and enjoy the sunshine in Marira. I actually asked this morning, what keeps you awake at night? This one says, Nigel Farage keeps me awake at night with worry and despair. He and Zia have acted like mafia leaders in their treatment of Rupert Lowe. They were my only hope for saving this country, and now I've lost all hope, and I'm not alone. That's Mary. Paul Kingsley, that's a serious one. Paul Kingsley said, David, what keeps me awake at night are Crocs. They should be made illegal.
Oh, no.
I run a mile from anyone wearing them. Well, that's good to know. Good morning, David. This is Jasmine. Loving your show as usual. Thank you, Jasmine. Always a joy to listen and watch. Duncan suggested you watch the Rees-Moggs at home.
Yes.
It's fabulous.
Yes.
And very funny too. You can view it on Discovery Plus. I think it was filmed last summer and just before the elections. Apart from my husband snoring like a warthog, keeping me awake at night, it's the huge amount of criminals that are coming to our country on boats every day that keeps me awake. This is really irritating. Good morning, David. Sorry you lost £30 on the Grand National. I placed 4 separate £10 bets, and thanks to your sports presenter yesterday, Nick Ellaby, I bet on the winner. Yeah. And I hadn't considered that until he mentioned it and won. Should have listened to Nick Ellaby.
You should have done. Nick Rocket.
Nick Rocket, yes.
That was the horse that won.
Yeah. What happened to Duffelcoat? That's what I want to know. Duffelcoat just fell over.
I know.
Very, very sad. Duncan, thanks for the moment. We'll take a break. More stories coming up after the break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm with Duncan Bark, 7:36, Sunday, April the 6th. Flying by, Duncan.
Isn't it?
Flying by, yes. Right, let's talk about this. This is in the Telegraph. Senior Conservatives, including a former Prime Minister, have called for the release of the mother jailed for a social media comment made in the wake of the Southport murders. Remember this, of course. This Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, said the 31-month jail sentence 31 months imposed on Lucy Connolly, who is a childminder from Northampton, was excessive, and claimed that she was the victim of a politicised two-tier justice system. Her comments have been supported by Liz Truss, Bob Blackman, who is the chairman of the 1922 committee. It's very influential indeed. Now, just to remind you, Connolly, 42, was jailed last October after admitting inciting racial hatred. She'd made a post on X hours after the Southport killings in which she spoke of mass deportations and setting fire to asylum hotels for all I care. She said, "I feel physically sick knowing what these Southport families will now have to endure. If that makes me racist, so be it." She then had a think about what she'd posted. She took it down within 4 hours. She decided that maybe it wasn't the right thing to post. It had been viewed 310,000 times. Screenshots had been taken. Wait for this, and then the police turn up on August the 6th and charge her 3 days later. She has been in jail ever since for this social media post. They have tried to get her out. They have failed so far to even get temporary licence release to go and visit her sick husband. I thought, freedom of speech is the bastion of this country. It is the cornerstone of this country. Now, I agree that her comments were ill-advised, ill-judged, but she thought about them. She took them down. It was on a social media platform, and let me tell you, people say a lot worse on social media platforms. Where do you stand?
She shouldn't be in prison.
No.
She's not murdered anyone, she's not raped anyone, she's not committed violence against anyone. I think she made an error of judgment.
Yeah.
If she was, I'm just going to give you a comparison, if she was, which she's not, if she was the leader of some far-right organisation inciting people with a load of followers, I would take a different view.
Yeah.
But she's a mum, she's a family woman, she's a childminder who, after a few hours of posting this stuff, in the heat of the moment, thought, do you know what? This is not the right thing to do, and she took them down.
100%.
And I just don't think she should be in prison for this.
Neither do I.
And I think it also gets us into this debate about misinformation, because there's a lot of misinformation at the time regarding what was happening in Southport, and people reacted to that on social media, and that is a symptom of the problem with social media.
Well, of course, then also there was a vacuum of information, wasn't there? And that is due down to the government, because they refused to say anything, and of course then conspiracy theories spread in that vacuum of silence. And I mean, I think, and yet the double standards here, that you get arrested for that, and yet you've got people, well, we've got all these stories of people staying in this country, you know.
The most recent thing regarding social media and WhatsApp messages was the couple who were visited by the police and arrested by 6 officers because of messages to the school
that
their daughter went to, which has got nothing to do with inciting
where
racial
they criticised the head teacher.
Where they criticised the head teacher, and that was under the Malicious Communications Act. So there is this, we haven't got it right in this country, the balance between people having an opinion that other people might not like and people posting something on social media that genuinely could cause people to go and commit acts of crime. But this woman should not be in prison.
100%. This leads also to another story. This is in the Daily Mail. Violent Albanian gangland mobsters are hiding in vans, using Rolexes and hiring fake tourists to send dirty money back home to use in a life of luxury. Wait for this, there are 1,100 Albanians in jail, including murderers, rapists and Fid Balkan mafia kingpins. I thought we had a returns agreement, by the way, with Albania. They're controlling the drug trade, they're terrorising the UK, they've been convicted of murder, sex offences, money laundering and people smuggling. The NCA, the National Crime Agency, has for years warned about the significant threat posed by Albanian gangs because they are infamous for their professionalism and discipline, and also savage tactics. They now seem to dominate the British drug trade, negotiating directly with Colombian cartels, undercutting criminal rivals. They're flooding Britain's streets with cheap cocaine. That goes back to my point about decriminalisation, and therefore actually you would smash these gangs overnight because you're now allowing it to be taxed and regulated, so that gets rid of all of these problems overnight. So the money is going back to Albania. So there is a returns agreement there, but it's just quite interesting the way that they're doing this, and I was trying to understand how they're doing it. So they smuggle the money out of the UK by using couriers posing as tourists, sneaking the money out through commercial airports, trains and ferries. The couriers are given money to make the journey back and wads of cash, but also they're giving them Rolexes, or they're buying them Rolexes. Those Rolexes are sold at a lesser amount when they get to the other end. The premise to this is that the border staff don't stop people who are wearing Rolexes.
Right.
That's what they are saying, because you are less likely to be stopped.
They talk about one case here, don't they, in 2021, where they seized £123,000 hidden in a bumper of a van transporting goods from the UK. They named the person, Ulsa Sifoli, was arrested in Albania after an X-ray found 10 packages concealed within his white Mercedes van. They also found guns in the van as well. So this is very serious stuff. I mean, there is a returns policy. I'm very old school here. We have, at the end of 2024, the statistic that Albanians made up to 10.6% of the prison population in this country. Why are they still here?
I don't know.
You know, you come and live in this country, you break the law, then if it's a serious law that you've broken as opposed to maybe a traffic offence or whatever, particularly if you end up in prison with a custodial sentence, you need to go back to your country of origin. I don't think that's a particularly radical policy, is it?
No, the good news is the NCA and SPAC, which is the organisation in Albania, have now signed an agreement so that assets of Albanian criminals in the UK are now going to be seized in Albania as well. So that at least is something. But you're right, what the heck are they doing still in this country? This is quite interesting, just very quickly before the break, about a hotel threatening to evict hundreds of asylum seekers. You and I have spoken about the preponderance of hotels. Do you know, hotels, and I mentioned earlier, hotels are incredibly expensive at the moment.
Yeah.
And that is because a lot of these big hotel chains have been paid by the Home Office to house illegal migrants.
Yes.
And so, therefore, the prices for Joe Public have spiralled. But anyway, hotels are threatening to evict hundreds of asylum seekers. They haven't been paid. These are in the London area, saying they should have received payments from the Stay Belvedere hotels for housing the asylum seekers. They say they can't pay the insurance premiums, they are in breach of contracts, they don't have the cover. There are 38,000 asylum seekers in hotels costing £5.5 million a day. But this is really interesting. If those hotels aren't being paid, then what do? Let them out?
Where do they go?
Where do they go?
I don't know is the answer. I mean, I think about this quite often because the figures are vast, and the cost to the UK taxpayer, £5.5 million a day, is vast, because that is mounting up. And it's not about demonising people who come to this country, though there is a massive question mark that everyone who is coming here, particularly those illegally, i.e. crossing the channel, is in genuine need of sanctuary in this country, because the last time I checked, France was a perfectly safe country to remain in. So
relatively.
the idea that, well, relatively, but the idea that everyone here is seeking asylum or fleeing somewhere that's horrific doesn't really hold water with me. And I think we need to look at alternatives. And I remember under the last government, there were plans in place to use various ex-military bases that are now defunct and turning them into accommodation for asylum seekers. Local residents predictably have been up in arms about that, as they would be in some parts of the United Kingdom when hotels have been used. But I think we should have persevered with that.
So do I.
You shouldn't come and stay in a hotel, particularly if you've come to this country illegally. You know, we should provide something for them until we decide what's going to happen to them. But it shouldn't be a hotel. It needs to be very basic accommodation.
But you see, so people are objecting. So again, going back to Suffolk, when I was cycling, you see it all links together, I went past a disused military base, and actually you've got all the accommodation which was used for the families. It is behind massive fences, so it is a secure perimeter, and at the same time you're using hotels in Ipswich where people are free to wander around the town centre, and actually it feels very unsafe. And I mentioned this the other day. I was up in Boston with Richard Tice. I felt really unsafe in the centre of Boston, where you've got gangs of young men hanging around in the middle of Boston.
I just don't know why we haven't gone down this route of using old military bases that aren't doing anything, using Nissan huts, providing, you know, a canteen that just does food and stuff, because I think that would be, in the long run, a lot cheaper to the taxpayer than £5.5 million every day.
Well, it's the disincentive as well, isn't it? Because you're hardly going to come to the United Kingdom to go and stay in a former military base.
Exactly.
We should be in government, Duncan. Just saying.
I should be a dictator.
You should be a dictator. Right, we'll take a break. More stories after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes.
That was Russell Brand's response to those charges. He went further, stating there was so little trust in the British government, the levels of corruption are unprecedented. I'm talking specifically to you in the UK.
It's a way to make money, unfortunately. It's a drama which is being used to make money, and they're going to bring it into the education system, and they're going to make young boys, mainly young boys, watch this show who probably never even had the thoughts about committing such crimes or never even knew what an incel was. The way I see it is, it's propaganda.
Well, that's more than to make money. It's a way to bring in laws and go start going, look what's happened. We'll bring in this law to stop this fake thing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 10 to 8 on Radio Duncan. It's flown by. Sunday, April the 6th. I'm asking this morning, what keeps you awake at night? I was thinking you were going to say things like cost of living, insecurity, energy instability, whatever else. That's what I thought you were going to say. Alan in Merseyside says, David, what keeps me awake at night is jeans on old men.
Jeans on old men?
Yeah, they make them look hideous.
What age then should you stop wearing jeans? That's the question, Alan.
What's the answer?
I don't know. But what do you wear instead, though?
I don't think you should wear jeans in your 60s.
Don't you? But what would you wear instead?
I don't know, you might get told off.
Tweed?
Well, you wear red jeans, red cords.
I don't.
Yes, I think.
No, I don't.
Good.
You're going to be confused with someone else.
Mustard cords?
Haven't quite got there yet. I will, though.
OK, that's that one. Good morning, David. This is Peter. What keeps me awake at night is my financial situation. I totally understand that. It's worsened in the last few years. My pension may rise every year, but in no way has it risen to cope with the cost of living. And I do mean just basic living costs, food, energy and fuel. I can't see life improving for the average person in this country. Yeah, Jade says, good morning, Dr. David. About the question about what keeps me awake at night, the answer is my husband snoring. Keep the good work going. Great show as always. You are the best presenter on Talk. I'll take that. Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Jade. Stephen Cambridge. David, you fool. Nick Ellaby gave you the national winner yesterday. He did as well. So sorry you lost. So I went on the outfit or the name.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I'll do I Am Maximus because it won.
Yes.
So I did that each way.
I got a tip from a mate and won 160 quid.
I hate you. Yeah, thanks for that. Beers on you.
I might buy some mustard cords, actually.
Oh, you should, actually. David, are we in the UK really being advised to prepare for Putin affecting our gas supplies? If only we were sitting on decades' worth of gas that we could use to be self-sufficient. Oh, wait a cotton-picking minute. We are.
Yes.
Damn you, Mr. Ed Miliband, Mark in Selby.
Fracking.
Let's get fracking. Exactly. David, this is Alan. When the Tories were in power, they had to deal with COVID and the Ukraine war kicking off. They protected us. Now Labour are in power. They start panicking over tariffs. Let's hammer the rich, raise the taxes, stop the world. There are lots of other stories that I just want to whiz through very quickly. Let's just see what the time is. Just very quickly, this is interesting. Statins, you know, statins which you use to lower your cholesterol.
I don't have them.
No,
yet,
but this is a really interesting study from a couple of days ago. They can reduce the risk of dementia amongst those people who already have low cholesterol. So if you have a low cholesterol anyway, naturally, they've now found in this study that you put people on statins and their risk of dementia diminishes. And this could be, if this is true, and it was published in the BMJ Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery and Psychiatry, that those people, if you can seriously, and dementia is obviously one of the biggest costs in terms of health economics, but imagine that actually we're sitting on a drug that would reduce the risk of dementia for people with already low cholesterol, and you reduce their cholesterol anyway, then you're stopping them from getting cardiovascular disease and also from getting dementia.
That is a good news story.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And we need those.
Yeah, it's really good. And also this data is not... insignificant. 570,000 people were studied in this study, and they looked at people with a normal cholesterol, 4 millimoles per litre, and they actually showed them 26% less likely to get dementia and 28% less likely to develop Alzheimer's.
That's a good study.
So I saw that and I thought I must just mention that because, but obviously that research is ongoing, and dementia is obviously a huge problem in this country. Wait for this one. Joan of Arc was non-binary.
Of course she was.
Yeah, this is what kids are being taught. Joan of Arc was non-binary, apparently. This is what secondary school pupils are being taught. These are lesson plans for English language students aged between 11 and 14. This is about the French heroine, of course, Joan of Arc. The Who We Are anthology, published by Collins, is made up of representative and inclusive contemporary texts. They say Joan of Arc, 1412 to 31, is today considered by some to have been non-binary. What? This is because she cropped her hair in the male fashion, right, and wore men's clothes. Oh. It formed part of a heresy case against her for which she was burned at the stake in 1431. Here's the rider, Duncan. But she never claimed not to be female.
No.
And did not adopt the non-binary gender identity, which only emerged in the late 20th. What is going on?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on. There's a voice of common sense here, and that's Caroline Brown, a retired psychologist now working with the Women's Rights Network, who said, quote, "This is yet another ridiculous example of attempting to rewrite history and erase strong, rebellious female characters from our past. It's insulting to suggest that non-conforming women are not women. Non-binary is a nonsense term. Indeed, the Supreme Court in the UK recently ruled against including it as an option on passports." I'll do the third paragraph.
Yes, please do.
It's also another example of the junk science of queer theory being visited on children. It's unhelpful psychologically to a child's development and is likely to cause confusion and anxiety. Well done, Caroline Brown.
Well done, Caroline Brown. Also, apparently, it's not the first time Joan of Arc has been dubbed non-binary. This was done in 2022 at the Globe Theatre. They put on a play, I, Joan, giving her the pronouns they, them. Honestly, this has got to stop.
It has. So is the main rationale here the fact that she had short hair and wore blokes' clothes?
Yeah,
it's just
tunic.
It's just bizarre.
The whole thing is bizarre, actually. And actually, this is a really good one as well. One teacher said about the lesson plan, there's too much identity-first woke reading materials being foisted on pupils at the expense of classics like To Kill a Mockingbird or Of Mice and Men, and I would agree.
I would agree as well.
This is quite interesting as well, which came from Gabriella. I went on a blind friendship date with 5 total strangers after being matched by a personality algorithm. Let me just tell you what this is. Have you read this?
I have.
OK, so the idea being that increasingly people in big cities are lonely, you don't go and see people as much, and so you sign up on an app, you put in all your interests and whatever else you want to do. It matches you with 5 total strangers, and you go for dinner.
Brilliant idea.
Do you think?
I think so. I mean, look, I'm old school. I'd rather just, I'd just rather go to the pub, buy some beers with people, see if I can get...
But you're gregarious and you've got a local pub. But if you're in London, where do you go?
No, I get it. I think this is a terrific idea. It's good. But you've got to have the communication skills to make it work on the next level, haven't you? You can't just sit there with your bowl of soup and your pints, sort of like going, what do I say now?
Well, she also said she went there and then was quite nervous, not knowing whether she could, have the soup and then leave.
Yeah.
But this is called Time Left. It's an app which you can download to meet new people and combat big city loneliness in the digital age. It was launched in 2023, hosts 70,000 people every single month across 60 countries.
I think it is a good thing because, life in a big city, if you don't have a network there, a friendship network or any relatives, it can be remarkably lonely.
I would agree totally with that. So, will you be doing that?
What?
Getting your app downloaded.
No, because I have plenty of friends.
Ooh, look at you.
This is boastfully. And I'd rather go to the pub and be gregarious, to be honest with you, David.
OK. David, I disagree with you. This is Ed in Cornwall. Good morning, David. I disagree with you. I'm 66 and I regularly wear jeans.
Right.
That's me told.
Yeah.
David, this is Mark in Sunbury-on-Thames. What keeps me awake at night is how corrupt and out of control the British police now are. Our police are habitual liars. Keep all of these messages coming in. I'm just asking this morning, what keeps you awake at night? It could be the cost of living, it could be the insecurity, the political instability, it could be Putin, it could be Trump, it could be anything. It could be jeans.
Could be men over 60 in jeans.
It could be men over 60 in jeans. Lots of you getting in touch about that. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. And Duncan, I think our time is almost upon us.
It's always a pleasure. Hope to see you soon.
Yes, and you. And what are you doing for the rest of the day?
Well, I'm going to go home and have a kip.
Right.
Because obviously I'm an old man. I need to get I need to refresh. And then I might walk the dog later.
Very nice.
And then...
shorts?
Shorts,
lumberjack shirt,
and maybe a trip to the pub. Now we're allowed to drink beer.
Very good, of course. Yes, the day before Prohibition Day.
Yes, maybe a couple of pints of Hophead.
That sounds lovely. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for
Always
coming
a
in.
pleasure.
It's been a
Love being here.
great fun morning, so thank you very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. We still have so much more to come this morning. We will go through more of this morning's top stories. Then also we have a Future Politics panel this morning, joined by Oliver Dean, who's a political commentator, and Grace Badamosi will be joining us as well. I spoke to her, I think, only yesterday down the line. So we've got our Future Politics panel coming up. Also, I'm going to be asking who has had a good week in politics, who's had a bad week in politics, and who, quite frankly, should have a week off. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
very good morning to you. Just after 8 o'clock now on Sunday, April the 6th. I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you. The sun is up. I hope you're having a fantastic time wherever you are waking up. Great news this morning. The Brighton Marathon is taking place this very morning around the Sussex Seaside Resort. Now, over 10,000 people will be running the Brighton Marathon. By the way, the biggest one in the country is London, which has over 50,000 runners. And it's on the 27th of this month. Now, if you are running the Brighton Marathon today, good luck. That is a great song. Really good song. By the way, it's also Tartan Day today, a day showcasing the rich tapestry of Scottish heritage, culture and traditions. It commemorates the signing of the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320. That's like Hooked on Classics. Was it Hooked on Classics? Right, also, it's New Beer's Eve. This day marks the day before the end of Prohibition in the United States. It's a reminder that we are free to enjoy beer, and we must do so.
I'm pretty good at drinking beer. I'm pretty good at drinking beer.
Yeah. I can confirm that is also true for me. Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So on this very day in 1963, Britain and the United States signed the Polaris Missile Agreement. Polaris was a submarine launched, a nuclear-tipped weapon designed as a nuclear deterrent. On this day in 1974, which I remember so vividly, Swedish pop group ABBA won the 19th annual Eurovision Song Contest in Brighton, Sussex with, what was the track? Waterloo. Very good, very good. The Swedish version single, by the way, on the B-side was Honey Honey. Not in England, though, because on the English version, you had Waterloo on one side and you had Watch Out on the B-side. And then on this day in 1984, the 17-year-old South African barefooted long and middle distance runner Zola Budd was granted British citizenship by Home Secretary Leon Britton after only a matter of weeks, which enabled her to compete as a British citizen in the Olympic Games. And as you can expect, the decision provoked considerable controversy. That was on this day in 1984, and those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Weekend breakfast, feel alive and right. With David Bull, everything's just right.
Very good morning to you. 6 minutes past 8 already, Sunday, April the 6th. I'm asking this morning, and I was just thinking about all of the stories in the newspapers about tariffs, about the economy, also Russia listening in and trying to map what's going on underneath the sea around this this great country, also trying to interrupt all the undersea cables, the internet. There's another story this morning saying you need to stock up with 3 days' worth of supplies in case of an emergency. So it all seems pretty doom and gloom. And I lost money at the Grand National yesterday, so that just finishes it all up. But anyway, that's why I'm asking this morning, what keeps you awake at night? It can be anything, whether it's the cost of living, paying your mortgage, what happens to interest rates. It could be about global insecurity. It could be about anything. Let me know your thoughts on that, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us also on X at talkTV. I've got myself into a bit of a pickle over the jeans. Julie, good morning. Good morning, David. I'm a lady. I'm over 80, and I still wear jeans. So shoot me then. No, OK, so maybe I was thinking about men not wearing jeans in their 60s. I don't know. David, lots of you talking about you're worried about the way that we're being policed. I think this is a reference to the two-tier policing. Let's talk to Steve now in Leeds. Good morning.
Good morning, David. How are you?
Yeah, all right, thanks very much. What worries you at the moment?
Well, it's just a quick call. I heard you referencing building asylum camps for asylum seekers.
Yes.
To get them out of the hotels, but doing that doesn't understand the business model of the smugglers. So these young lads that are coming over, they don't pay up front, they owe the money. And the reason they want to be in hotels is that with all the costs paid, is that they can then go out on the black market, earn the money to pay back the people smugglers, because if they don't, the families at home will get tortured. And that river of cash is flowing through the UK.
Yes.
Now, if you put them in asylum camps, if you're old enough to remember when we did have them in asylum camps, there was an army camp, and they set it on fire because they said the accommodation wasn't good enough. We had a riot, and that's when the hotels started. Now, these young men are fueled by the fact they have to earn money when they get here. So build a camp if you want, but you're going to have to build a really big wall around it. You're going to fill it.
But no, I understand. But surely, if you put them in a camp, then it removes the incentive to come here in the first place.
I think it's a great idea to do it, but it's not just a case of taking over an army camp with a little bit of a wire fence. You'd have to build a really big wall to stop them cutting the fence and running off, because they need to earn that money. And the people smugglers are there saying, well, if you don't earn it, mate, we're going to take it out a pound of flesh.
OK, what about the idea, which has been mooted now, and it has been pushed around, and I think Labour is changing its position now somewhat on this. What about offshore processing? So you come to this country, you are then removed, you have offshore processing. They were talking about Christmas Island, for example, where you have offshore processing. If you are deemed that you are really a true asylum seeker, you're allowed to stay. If not, you're deported.
Well, you could link the two. Why don't you just build a camp on the Shetlands? There's only about 50 people live there. Build a camp there. If they want to break the fence, you probably wouldn't even need a fence. If you want to swim 200 miles across the North Sea to get back to Britain, you can do. Just build it on one of our islands offshore, off Scotland, in the Orkneys, Ascension Island. We've got the islands ourselves. We could build them on.
And just in terms of the public's reaction to that, what would it be?
I think most of the public would be quite happy for us to build an island. I mean, look at it this way. If you go back to the Chagos Islands, when we wanted to build a military base, we took all the people from the island and moved them to London.
Yes.
So if you want to build it on the Orkney Islands, take all the people from the Orkneys, relocate them, and just have it as a transit island.
I mean, it's quite. I find it absolutely fascinating that the Labour government, now it's in charge, it closes the Bibi Stockholm on day one, pretty much. It closes all the other army camps, Scampton, Wethersfield, and all the rest of it. But now it's the cold light of day, isn't it? The realisation that actually they are going to have to do something because it's getting worse.
Well, they've only just realised that this river of cash going through barber shops and car washes and things like that is actually what's funneling the gangs.
Yeah.
And stopping that cash means the disincentive for the gangs will be, why would I send them to Britain if I'm not going to get my loan paid back? So what they need to focus on is all that cash that's going through all these places, that river of cash, because, 30,000 people at £6,000 a piece is 18 million quid. That's leaving this country in cash, in bumpers, and we don't seem to do anything about it. I never hear of these big, raids. We had one big raid on barber shops, but actually there's millions and millions and millions. So, and they must know it's there.
Well, if they don't, then the public is way ahead of the police.
Yeah. I mean, I said, I go to my local Turkish barber, right? There's normally about 3 people in there, and I see people going in and out the back of the barber shop who obviously haven't had an haircut. And you think to yourself, well, all these young asylum seekers who came from villages in different countries who probably never went to a barber shop suddenly need an haircut every 4 weeks.
Every 4 days. Yeah. Really good to talk to you, Steve. Thanks very much for your call this morning. So I'm asking, what keeps you awake at night? It could be anything at all. 0344 499 1000. But now it's time for the Future Politics panel.
The Future Politics panel.
Well, joining me this morning, Oliver Dean, who's a political commentator, and Grace Badamosi, political commentator. Good morning to the two of you.
Good morning, David.
Nice to see you both. Right, let's talk about all of the big headlines. Let's start. Keir Starmer has ordered an economic reset. For the last 6 days, I've been talking about tariffs. We're sort of watching what Donald Trump is doing. He's hit the ground running, make America wealthy again, and then you've seen China responding with 34% on their tariffs, which is in reciprocation to the United States. Now, Keir Starmer, this is according to The Observer, is preparing to rethink key elements of government economic policy. He says old assumptions should be discarded. He says we may need to raise taxes again or cut benefits again. We know that almost $5 trillion was wiped off the value of global stock markets as a result of that. We've heard Jaguar Land Rover have now actually said they're pausing shipments to the United States. What do you think, Grace, Keir Starmer actually means? Is everything up for grabs now?
I think it's shocking, but again, somehow unsurprising for particularly this Labour government. I think with what you've mentioned with the tariffs, with sort of China responding with these tariffs, Rachel Reeves' previous, I guess, mini budget or fiscal statement, whatever they want to call it, left very little headroom in the beginning. So now they're going to have to...
Well, she fiddled it, didn't she?
Basically. So now they're going to have to look to cut even more, which is obviously going to impact sort of the worst off in society. So... yeah, I think especially when they went into government sort of saying that they're not going to be cutting spending on welfare, they're not going to be increasing taxes. I think at the next budget, we are going to definitely be seeing tax increases.
So it's interesting, I think, Oliver, just in terms of Starmer's rhetoric, and of course they're pre-briefing us here, they're saying globalisation has failed, right, but they're also saying, I will shelter British business.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really know what that means.
Well, look, I think it's worrying with what Keir Starmer's saying, the fact that they could be considering raising taxes, despite having pledged in the run-up to the election that they weren't going to raise taxes on working people. But I think, look, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have a choice here. They can do what, for example, China did and other countries are going to do and impose retaliatory tariffs on the United States. But I think that would be a grave mistake. We don't want to get into a trade war with the United States. The only people that lose out in a trade war are consumers, are everyday people. And if Keir Starmer goes forward with either tariffs or tax increases, it's going to be the worse off and they're going to suffer as a result.
And how do you think he's dealing with it so far by saying, look, we need to be calm and pragmatic, let's not jump to anything? That bit I welcome. I'm not quite sure why he's now talking to businesses and saying come up with a list of goods that you might want to put tariffs on, or is that part of a broader strategy?
I mean, look, in terms of the calmness and the pragmatism we're seeing from him, I think he's right to do that. I mean, considering that, you know, other countries have faced worse tariffs than we have, that's a good sign, but obviously a 10% tariff in itself is completely terrible for the economy. But like you say, I think, you know, the fact that we're even considering imposing tariffs on US goods is, like I said, a grave mistake.
What does he mean by this, Grace? So Keir Starmer will say tomorrow, this is tomorrow, that the seismic global economic effects prove the government must move further and faster to boost growth with supply-side reforms. Apparently, this week they're going to make pro-growth announcements. Well, that'll be a first, including easing regulations on electric car manufacturers and bringing forward parts of the government's industrial strategy. What industrial strategy?
I mean, I welcome sort of investments into sectors I think can really prop up British business, but I am hesitant to giving more power to the state, particularly this government. If I'm being frank with you, I think we do need to get more investment in society to sort of, with what Ollie mentioned with the tariffs, we need to start looking at propping up British economy, but at the same time with supply side reforms, that's just more spending, which means that's just more taxes. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a tricky one.
But you see, so unless I'm totally misguided, I actually think this is a great opportunity for us because, of course, the EU very unhappy about the whole thing. Ursula von der Leyen's hair getting bigger and bigger as she sort of fights this back. So we've been hit by 10%. I agree that's not ideal, but they've been hit by 20%. Now, surely, and in many ways, he could now say, right, the economic situation around the world, the global instability has changed so dramatically. We're going to abandon our fiscal rules. This is actually a brilliant way of blaming an external factor to completely rewrite your economic philosophy and policy. You could then say, right, we're going to empower small businesses, we're going to drop the employer national insurance contribution levy that we said we put up, we are going to tax businesses less so that we get inward investment into this country.
Yeah, and it's the fact as well that Keir Starmer has come out and said that these are supposedly ironclad fiscal rules, and yet we're now seeing he's willing to completely go against them. But I think you're completely right to say that this is a perfect opportunity for the government to turn to businesses and say, look, we have confidence in you, we are going to, you know, invest in you, put faith in you. And for example, things like reversing the national insurance contributions rises. If we can put businesses at the centre of our society, at the centre of the economy will grow and people will be better off.
Yeah. Are they going to do it?
That's the question. I mean, I'm cautious to say yes, because knowing this government, it's just going to be more tax increases after more tax increases. But if they are really serious about getting the economy growing, about putting growth at the centre of this economy, then they need to go with it.
I just don't know what else he can do personally, because if you then just if you don't do something radical, you are in serious trouble.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is that Keir Starmer, as you mentioned, has up to this point been playing sort of the pragmatic and sensible approach, which I think is the correct approach up until a certain point. At some point, sort of with what Ollie mentioned, you have to think outside of the box a little bit. You have to look at the constraints that you've been given and, like you mentioned, build a growth strategy out of that, look to invest out of that. So I think I want to see a little bit more of creative thinking from Keir Starmer and sort of find a way to actually sort of turbocharge the British economy that's been stagnant for a number of years.
OK, there's a brilliant article in The Spectator. You may not have seen this. Clement Attlee, in the words of Winston Churchill, was a modest man with much to be modest about, which is a fantastic put down. But just... basically, this article is about whether you have a sense of purpose. Part of the problem for the Labour government is actually, I'm not sure there is a unified sense of purpose, a set of principles, an ideology. I think they came from being in opposition into power, and actually there is nothing cohesive holding the whole thing together, because you can see all the different departments working in different directions. You've got Rachel Reeves over here, then you've got Ed Miliband spaffing money on ridiculous projects and all the rest of it. Then you've got expansion of airports, which flies in the face of what Ed Miliband is doing. Does the Labour government actually have a strategy?
I don't think so, and you know, considering as well that they ran on the promise of change. Yes, they've changed things, but nobody knows what that change is. Rachel Reeves has pledged that she's going to fix the foundations of the economy, but like I said, I don't think they know what these foundations are supposed to look like. And it just seems as though they're running from fire to fire, putting each one out rather than tackling the source of the problem in the first place.
It's interesting, they talk about the different governments. Margaret Thatcher had a purpose. John Major didn't seem to have a purpose. And governments are therefore defined by whether you have a sense of purpose. It's all very well having individual policies, but you really need to have an end goal to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think particularly this government is very much without strategy. I think a lot of people talk about how fractured the sort of previous Conservative governments were in terms of ideology. And while that may be true, I think this Labour government, when you actually look under the hood, you realise it's really not a cohesive force at all. There are many sort of factions of ideology and sort of purpose and strategy within this Labour government, which results in what we see at the moment, where it's sort of everyone's running, but in what direction, I guess.
And also, just for a Labour government, I thought the idea of Labour was to look after, well, it's called Labour, it's meant to be the party of work and looking after the poorest in society. But when you look at this, the measures they've announced will drive 250,000 more Britons, it's 250,000 Britons, 50,000 of them children, into poverty. Their policies also mean that 3 million families lose an average of 1,720. And here's the thing that they haven't quite worked out. Poorer, disabled households are taking the biggest hit.
Yeah, I mean, look, they are the party of work, but that's what they've been saying. But it's also the party of working people. And
what is a working person?
Well,
I've heard
no, I completely agree. And I don't think Keir Starmer knows that either. I mean, the policies that they've put forward are hurting the most vulnerable in society, the poorest in society. But I think, to go back to the point you said about how Margaret Thatcher and John Major had end goals and objectives, everybody knew when Thatcher came to power, the end goal was to shrink the size of the state, to reduce taxes and reduce the bills that you're going to be paying. Keir Starmer's come to power and nobody knows what the end goal is. Like, is it going to be a high tax, high welfare economy? Is it going to be, you know, low taxes, high spending? We don't know. It's simply the case that we don't know.
But he doesn't know.
Exactly, and nobody knows, and it's worrying that we've somehow elected a person who's now Prime Minister and a Chancellor who have absolutely no clue where they're going to end up in 4 years' time.
And so, with those characters, you've got Rachel Reeves, you've got Ed Miliband, you've got Keir Starmer. The polls are going against them. So who wins out here? Who leaves the Big Brother house?
Honestly, I've got no clue who wins, but I can tell you who loses, which is the British people.
Okay, good answer. Yeah. Who's leaving the Big Brother house?
Who's leaving? I think Rachel Reeves is going to be hearing. I have full confidence in the Chancellor in about a few weeks. I think at some point
you're going to say that, or is he going to say that?
I think with sort of the fiscal headroom that we've been talking about, particularly with these tariffs, that's going to be absolutely wiped out. And at some point, with what Ollie mentioned, because they have no direction, they haven't sat down and said, we know that spending is going to increase, we know we're going to increase welfare and taxes are going to have to go up as a result. They haven't said that. They haven't said the flip side, which is that at all costs we're making sure the books are balanced. So at the end of it, I think Rachel Reeves is going to sort of end up taking the fall for this one. So
do you?
I think so.
What do you think?
I agree, and I think it's right that she does take the fall for it, because the economy has stagnated as a result of her. We saw in January, for example, payroll employment went down. We've seen employers cutting jobs because of her tax hikes. It's safe to say that the economy is doing worse off as a result of her, and I think she's the only person that can take the fall for this.
10,000 millionaires leaving the country.
That's what I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous, and it seems as though this is supposedly the most pro-business government in UK history, and we're seeing businesses lose confidence in them every single day.
And what's the timeline on that?
In terms of
her leaving? Which is your prediction?
Gosh. Well, I agree with Grace in that we're going to be hearing over the next few weeks that the Prime Minister has complete confidence in her. Look, I don't have...
That's the death sentence, isn't it?
I wouldn't have confidence in her to watch my pet if I went on holiday, let alone run the economy.
Right.
But look, it's going to be at least a few months, I think, until the Keir Starmer really sees that she's dead weight and he needs to get rid of her.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think because of the previous Conservative government, the Labour Party won't want to look like they're sort of chopping and replacing people ad hoc, so they're going to sort of keep her longer than she's sort of useful for,
I mean, they're certainly not as ruthless as the Tories.
Yeah.
The Tories are much more ruthless. If you don't perform, you're out, and they love to change a leader, as we know. Thanks very much to the two of you for the moment, Oliver Dean and Grace Badamosi. So, David, let me just get this right, says Stuart. Keir Starmer is having another reset after the previous reset, the earlier reset. Yeah. That's it. Exactly right. We'll continue with our Future Politics panel after this break.
Harry and Meghan have never actually worked in their lives. But fancy picking on a black female, which Harry has just done, given, as you've laid out, all of what's gone before us, accusing the royal family of racism, but of course very cleverly not saying who, so that the thing would fester and fester. So it has come back to bite them. But where we shouldn't be surprised is, don't forget, Harry, this is the individual that years ago was photographed wearing a Nazi uniform.
Because they're trying to convince the people who are having their very profitable and decent, well-paid jobs in places like Aberdeen cut because of the net zero agenda.
It's in Aberdeen.
Yes, that's right. They're telling them now that they this will be fine because they'll invent a kind of we'll invent a Mickey Mouse GBN job for you, which will obviously pay the same and be as productive as the one that we're giving up, even as we import.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm in the middle of Future Politics panel with Oliver Dean and Grace Badamosi. I just want to finish this conversation about political direction because I think it's really important. There are a couple of stories around. Jamie Green, the former Conservative Scottish MSP, has defected to the Liberal Democrats, which seems an extraordinary thing to do. He was the West of Scotland MSP. He was unveiled as a Lib Dem at the party's spring conference in Inverness on Thursday. Now, Jamie is a friend of mine and he is a true Conservative through and through. He went in on the back of Ruth Davidson, and obviously the Tories, it was the resurgence of the Tory party in Scotland. He has quit because he says that actually the Conservatives lack direction and they are becoming reform light. So they are moving to the right. He says that's not the party that he actually recognises. And that brings me rather nicely just to talk about sense of direction and everything, Grace, which is, we'd said Labour doesn't have a sense of direction, but I just don't see what the Conservatives stand for. And then you've got Kemi Badenoch, who really on paper has everything, and she's just doesn't deliver.
I think firstly with the story about Jamie, I think that is a little bit of a shame. But I do sort of share his concerns that the Conservative Party is perhaps sort of in the hopes of chasing electoral success, moving closer to reform and sort of moving closer to the right, which I don't think is firstly in their best interest.
But is that
nor
because
is that
they
an
don't
election-winning
have
strategy?
Is it because the Conservative Party it's the tail wagging the dog, isn't it? You don't go after the votes and then make up policy on the back of getting more votes.
Yeah.
You actually have a vision and then the voters follow you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sort of voters, if they are sort of in support of reform, they can sort of see through that. And Conservative voters who are perhaps not interested in what reform has to offer are also equally turned off by that. So I think going back to your question about the future of the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch, the point of sort of this period of opposition was to sort of build back the Conservative Party and bring back Conservative ideals. But I think there is still a little bit of a mix within the party where some people think we should be going further right and some people think that we should be sort of going back towards the centre.
See, I've been watching Robert Jenrick's videos and actually I think he's quite impressive.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting though because so a few weeks ago CPS hosted the Margaret Thatcher conference.
Yes. And
Kemi gave a keynote address there. But I think the most interesting speech there was actually George Osborne because he made a good point that the Conservatives in trying to gain more votes are going to try and look to move further to the right and to get reform votes. But in doing that, they're actually losing the centre-right ground, who are, which are like people...
Like Jamie Green.
Exactly, like Jamie Green. People in the southwest are actually going to the Liberal Democrats. And the Conservative Party has always been a broad church. It's always been a party that has...
Well, it's not one party, is it?
Well,
it's
exactly.
7 parties.
Well, yes, but it's, you know, you've got One Nations, you've got Thatcherites, you've got everybody in the middle. And I think you're completely right to say that I don't think we have a sense of direction at the moment. We just seem to be chasing electoral votes. What we need to be doing is getting sound policies in place, and then the votes will come as a result of that.
And also, I think, you know, the Conservative Party keeps saying, well, Kemi's not giving any policies at the moment because she wants to think about it and have a strategy because obviously 5 years is a long time. That doesn't rub in this day and age of 24-hour news cycles. They want... The public need to know what... You don't have to give me the detail, but you do have to tell me roughly the direction you're heading.
Yeah, and she did, a few weeks ago, lay out her plans for renewal 2030 or whatever it was. But they were...
Another ridiculous soundbite.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's broad policies, yes, but I think she's correct in laying out broad policies rather than going with anything specific. There's a worry from an electoral standpoint that if she commits to anything serious in terms of like actual serious policies, specific policies now, the economic situation could change 2 years,
True,
3 years
but
down
she's now sort of saying, well, I might leave the ECHR. Well, if you go to reform, you know the reforms policy is to leave the ECHR. So that's what I mean, but that people don't really know where they stand.
Well, but we don't know where the country's going to stand in a few years' time. I mean, look, had Kemi announced a set of economic policies a few weeks ago, she would have then had to U-turn given Trump's imposition of 10% tariffs. So, you know, if the situation is going to change within a few weeks, why make specific policy recommendations and decisions now when they can change infinitely for the next few years.
Isn't that what upsets people so much? Which is actually they don't know what politicians stand for, and they just think they're all on the gravy train. And quite frankly, if you're not going to say anything, you might as well be led by a fridge freezer.
I think with Kemi, I do agree that she's sort of committed to quite broad policies at the moment. But I think, like Ollie mentioned, that is a little bit of a good thing.
Come on, give me a policy.
That is a little bit.
Tell me one policy.
That is a little bit of a good thing.
Tell me one policy, Grace.
In terms of what we discussed about the Labour Party and the Labour government, I think that is what we're going to see is the Labour government nailed to the cross by their own policies. I think ultimately they are going to have to go in direct contradiction to what they said they were going to do when they were in opposition, and that is a thing that voters don't like, sort of voting in people because they say they're going to do something and doing the exact opposite. So I think Kemi, for all of her faults, is sort of doing the right thing at the moment.
How long's she got?
I think she's got longer than Reeves, if that's a...
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the barometer.
That's the barometer I'm going for.
How long's she got?
I would have confidence in her to lead the party into the next general election.
Rubbish.
It's true.
She's not going to make it.
Well, it would be ridiculous for the Conservative Party to get rid of a leader before they've even...
well, you've had a few, haven't you? You can have another one.
No, I just don't think... Look, if you're trying to go to the public and you're trying to say we're a changed party, the last thing you want to be doing is doing what you've been doing for the last time you were in government and getting rid of leaders like they're completely nothing.
OK, all right. Let's move on and talk about this big story in the Mirror, actually. Shock figures reveal the true scale of kids' deadly weapon crimes across the country. 10 knife or offensive weapon crimes by children have been recorded every single day, according to the Mirror. Offences have soared by a quarter in a decade. As many as 3,591 knife and offensive weapon crimes by 10 to 17-year-olds were dealt with by the criminal justice system in the year ending 2024, September 2024. That means there are 69 cautions or convictions in England and Wales a week. That is 10 a day. And obviously I do have to mention Adolescence, which is this thing on Netflix, which I'm not going to tell you what happens in case you haven't seen it. But there is a major problem here. What is going on? Why kids feel the need to carry knives?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen since 2010 there's been a 25% increase in the number of young people being involved in this. And I think at the same time as well, we've seen the number of police officers across our streets reduced by about 14%. So I think there's definitely a correlation there. But if young people aren't being properly shown the consequences of their actions, if they think that they can walk around with knives and with other sharp weapons and not face the consequences for it, then they're going to keep doing it and we're going to see crime increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think firstly those numbers are absolutely disgraceful. I'm really shocked by that. And I think also another factor we have to consider is the sort of degradation of social cohesion. So us as a community not feeling like we're together, and then particularly children are the ones that suffer as a result. So if you're not particularly coming from a strong family unit, or if you're not sort of supported by adults who act as role models, teachers or whatever, then you're sort of, I guess, left behind. So you're given to these sort of external forces, whether you join a gang or you sort of fall in with the wrong crowd. And I think it's very sad that young people who have this potential are essentially sort of left no other alternative than to go down a road that is sort of harmful to themselves and harmful to others.
And we've seen these terrible examples, haven't we, of innocent kids being killed or seriously injured, just going about their own business or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or just happening to look at someone in the wrong thing. So I mean, they are shocking, absolutely shocking figures. What do we do? What do we do about it? I mean, I agree part of this is parental, but then the parents may not know what's going on, but then the parents need to know what's going on. So it is partly parental. Also, the role of the school. What else do we need to do?
I think sort of those are the two main ones that I think about a bit. Sort of school, because you, as a child, you spend quite a lot of time there, and if you're not at school, you're at home. But I think a little bit of a further point would just be sort of around internet access, I think, and sort of the things that you see on the internet. Because with adolescence that you mentioned, you can have sort of parents that have no clue about the spaces and the chat rooms that their children are in, and they're sort of radicalised to this point of absolute insanity.
Well, so this is a really interesting point about the internet and what these kids are watching, because the blurring between what you're watching on a video game, for example, some of those are incredibly violent. I think actually for a developing mind, it is very difficult to disentangle what is real and what is not real.
And the algorithms are designed in a way that keeps these kids watching these things, keeps them addicted. And I think it goes to a broader point that we need to really be shaping how young men specifically and young boys are actually viewing this content online. And they need role models. I mean, look, we saw Gareth Southgate give a speech a few weeks ago where he said, look, young boys need role models now more than ever, because they need you know, proper, strong, masculine figures in their life that aren't people like Andrew Tate, but are people that show, you know, the real role that people can play in society.
I would agree totally. Just very quickly, if I may, we talked about young people not actually being in work, and I just wonder, there was an article in The Spectator as well saying the national living wage rising from £11.44 an hour to £12.21, that's a rise of 6.7%. A pay rise, that's of £1,400 a year. We've been talking about the fact that businesses are already struggling because of the cost of national insurance contributions, that we know all these businesses are laying people off. Are we paying too much? Is the minimum wage too high?
Oh, it's a very bold question.
Well, thanks.
No, but I'm hesitant because I don't know the complete economic situation.
Sure.
But I would say that it goes to a broader point about the economy and the fact that businesses are facing increasingly difficult circumstances. You know, we need to be getting more people into work, especially young people as well. And we've supposedly got a government that is the party of work, and we need to see proper economic policies that champion that.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ollie. It's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one.
I think the wages in this country are too low. I think sort of in one of the sort of the most developed countries in the world, I think people should be earning more.
We have the second highest minimum wage. The second highest minimum wage relative to median wages in the G7. We're slightly behind France, but ahead of Germany, Canada, Japan, and the US.
I think if Britain wants to position itself as sort of a global
want more?
leader, I think people should be paid more. But I agree that it's sort of pointless when that's eaten up by increases in council tax and train fares and broadband and the rest of it. And on the business side as well, again, it's sort of pointless if businesses have to let people go to cover to the high wages. So I think people should be paid more, but I think that shouldn't be at the expense of a healthy economy.
No, but does the government actually understand this, that the businesses are struggling, and if you can't actually afford to employ people, you won't employ people?
Well, I would hope that the government has the sense to sort of listen to what businesses are saying, but I think that might be asking a bit too much of this government at the moment. Yeah.
No, I don't think the government understands business at all. And look, we've seen groups that are representing businesses. So, for example, a charity called the Jobs Foundation has come out recently and has, you know, really acted as a driver in support for business. But the more time Rachel Reeves spends in Number 11, the more I think, you know, she really doesn't have a clue as to what she wants to do.
So you're cutting her odds now, since your last answer. So she's got even less time.
No, look, I said she has a few months, and that was me being completely optimistic. And that's, I think, what Grace said earlier about how, you know, they need to distance themselves from the previous Conservative government in, like, getting rid of ministers willy-nilly. But look, I don't have confidence in her as a Chancellor. Businesses don't have confidence in her as a Chancellor. I think the Prime Minister doesn't have confidence, but he's saying that he does, and it's only a matter of time before she has to kick the bucket. No, not in that way, not in that way.
I wasn't expecting that. Oliver and Grace will pause there whilst I just compose myself. We'll continue with our Future Politics panel after this break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:41, Sunday, April the 6th. I'm joined with Oliver Dean and Grace Badamosi. We're in the middle of our Future Politics panel. Now, this is quite interesting in the Telegraph. Hotels are threatening to evict hundreds of asylum seekers because they are failing to receive contracted payments from an accommodation company, which has been ditched by the Home Office. These are hotels in the London area saying, well, look, we haven't been paid for the asylum seekers, so we're going to throw them out. And that sort of made us then talk earlier on about the fact that we've got all these hotels full of asylum seekers in the middle of areas like central Ipswich, for example, or Boston or wherever else, which many people are finding them that these make the town centres less welcoming, that it's an impact for local businesses and so on. And we were just talking, and I wonder what your thoughts are, and I won't come to you first, Grace, because I think I know what you think. But Oliver, what many of our callers are saying, look, why are they in hotels? Why don't we put them in former military bases with a great big perimeter fence? If you actually, fine, make sure they're looked after and you're fed, but you have a canteen, you know, you're given 3 meals a day. You don't give them luxury accommodation in a 4-star hotel. You remove the incentive to come here. That will soon get back and people won't then make that crossing.
Well, look, we've previously put them in military base or military camps.
Scampton, Wethersfield.
Yeah, and we saw the conditions on show, and quite frankly, they were horrific.
But make the conditions better then?
Well, yeah, but it depends how we're going to do that. And look, I think there's this...
In what sense were they horrific?
I will just say, like, you know, I think there's this systemic problem that we seem to be criminalising asylum seekers for trying to, you know, make a better life or try to... or when they're fleeing conflict.
They're illegal migrants. Many of them are illegal migrants.
Because what we need is solutions, not scapegoats. And it feels as though many people, you know, whether it be politicians, whether it be people in the media, are seeking to criminalise these people. They are human beings at the end of the day, and we need to make sure they're living.
How many are genuine asylum seekers?
Well, we don't know the answer to that, but again, what
the majority.
Look, at the end of the day, they're still...
Is it the majority?
They're human beings.
Is it the majority?
They're human beings at the end of the day.
There are also human beings that made the choice, these young men made a choice to come across to this country.
Yeah.
And we are basically re-incentivising more people to come here. And we're spending $5.38 billion on asylum seeker accommodation when we can't actually afford for the rest of the country to operate properly.
I mean, look, there seems to be this common assumption that these people who are being housed in these hotels are living in absolute luxury.
Well, they're not bad.
No, well, I've been to one. There's one in South Croydon,
right?
And it's not at all what the media portrays it to be. And I think we need to turn away from this, you know, black and white issue of saying, look, these people are bad, these people are good, and we need to be focusing on long-term solutions for this.
Come on then, that sounds like a politician's answer.
No, like, again, it's just the case of we can't just say to people...
You're giving me waffle. What are you going to do then? You're in charge, you're going to keep them in hotels. How are you sorting this out?
No, what I'm going to say is that the solution is not to turn around and put them in...
No,
the solution is not to turn around and put them in situations where their conditions are bad. Look, you brought up
You've got a bed, you've got a shower, you've got food...
You brought up the Bibby Stockholm.
Yes.
Yeah, the Bibby Stockholm, and they had diseases running rampant on there. And that's not a condition that anybody should be.
What about a former army base where actually they've been used and they've got accommodation, they had family accommodation on those military bases? There are many near me in Suffolk, for example, that are disused, but they are also secure.
If the conditions are safe and they are humane and people can live in them, then it's okay.
Fine.
But
now it's okay.
But we can't, as we said earlier, look, we've had situations in the past where we put them into camps and then the conditions have been absolutely atrocious.
Don't know what your solution is, Grace.
I think, thank you, Ollie, you sort of took the words out of my mouth there, I think. Suggesting to sort of de facto imprison people who are fleeing war and conflict is not a good look for any developed
Not all of them are.
But that's the point, we don't know. These can include people who are fleeing genuine war and conflict, and the point is that you mentioned that they're illegal sort of immigrants. They're not. Being an asylum seeker is not an illegal act. You can come to a country to seek asylum. The point that it becomes illegal is when your asylum claim has been denied and you are due to be deported and you abscond. That's the point it becomes illegal. Someone coming to this country...
Is hotels the right solution?
I agree with you. Hotels are ridiculous. The reason they're in hotels is because the government doesn't process their claims properly. True asylum seekers, they want to come to this country, they want to be quickly processed so they can start building their life and rebuild into having faced the most horrific conditions. I agree with you that the use of hotels is ridiculous.
If we had former military bases like Scampton, like Wethersfield, would fewer people make that perilous journey?
Firstly, I think people who are fleeing absolute sort of war and terror, again, fleeing absolute war and terror, I think they're going to come sort of no matter what the accommodation is. I think, again, I go back to the point is we don't need these massive amounts of accommodation if the government does their job and process these people's claims
But
quickly.
They're not going to.
We're sort of creating solutions for problems that we created ourselves. So I think the solution that you sort of passing Ollie for is to actually sort of process these claims.
So there are another 8,000 migrants in hotels since Keir Starmer came to power. They've realised they are not on top of this, they can't get on top of it, and yet more will come.
I agree with you that this is an unsustainable situation. I completely agree with you on that point. My point of contention is how we deal with it. I don't think putting people in army bases or in, as Ollie mentioned, truly quite horrific living conditions is the way that a compassionate government should be treating these people.
All right, I'm just going to talk. You're not Gen Z, are you? I am. Are you Gen Z?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're Gen Z. Yeah. Right. Now, wait for this. So, I might say that you lot are really lazy, Gen Z. That's what, common thought process. Apparently, though, grumbling about the work ethic of the younger generation is a time-honoured tradition. That's very true, actually. As you get older, you say, well, they don't do any work. One Oxford professor is pushing back. Apparently, the teenagers and 20-somethings of Gen Z, you're not lazy, apparently. You're practising justified effort management.
Do you know what? I'm inclined to agree with that, actually. I am inclined to agree with that. I think, particularly in places like the workplace, Gen Z are sort of not tired of being taken advantage for, but if your sort of workday is 9 to 5, why are you staying past 5:30? I think people realise that, work isn't everything.
Because you're lazy.
It's not laziness. I think it's not laziness. I think it's just Gen Z sort of having effective boundary management and making people aware of the fact that they're not going to be taken advantage of. I actually think that's a pretty good point.
It's fascinating, that, isn't it? Justified effort management.
I mean, look, we both go to LSE. I can safely say that, we're not. I'd like to think that, we're not lazy in the slightest. And I mean, look, having to get up at 6 o'clock to come on your show this morning.
Very good. Well done.
So I think
6 o'clock's very late.
But I think that goes to show that we're not all the same. Not all of Gen Z. I think there are definitely some, and we've seen as well with this rise in sick note culture and stuff. There is definitely a case to be made. But to paint everybody with the same.
I'm being slightly cheeky, but there is something quite interesting. So back in my day, you had to kind of chain yourself to the desk to prove that you were worth it, so that you would get in before the boss, you would stay there until it was midnight or whatever, and that was the culture that prevailed. You're right, actually. What people are doing, I think, is they're deciding, I'm going to have better work-life balance, and actually there's an argument to say that if you do that, your performance goes up anyway. And maybe we are just seeing a shift in the way that people work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, people, if you're going to be going into the office at 9 o'clock and leaving at 5, and then taking into account that you're then commuting back and forth from the office, if you're going to be working longer hours, like you say, you're going to be less productive. You're going to actually be a drain on the company more than a benefit. Whereas if you maintain that work-life balance and if you prioritise your own well-being, then you're going to end up doing better.
I mean, you should try medicine or possibly working in the media where you have absolutely no work-life balance. Thank you very much to both of you for taking part. Thank you to Oliver Dean and Grace Badamosi. That was today's Future Politics panel.
The Future Politics panel.
Just lots of messages coming in. David, could you please ask Oliver which leafy suburb he lives in, free from the gaze of migrant-filled hotels? His view might change if he lived in my area in Leicestershire. That's Nick Moore. Thank you. David, I'm finding it increasingly irritating, all this deportation talk. Deport to where exactly? No country is taking anybody back. It's idiocy to talk of deportation. We are sadly stuck with them. That's Joe in Hitchin. And I also asked this morning, what keeps you awake at night? This is rather good, from Glenn in Leeds. What keeps me awake, David, is the thought that Angela Rayner is one resignation away from being the Prime Minister. This is Talk.
Harry and Meghan have never actually worked in their lives. But fancy picking on a black female, which Harry has just done, given, as you've laid out, all of what's gone before us, accusing the royal family of racism, but of course very cleverly not saying who, so that the thing would fester and fester. So it has come back to bite them. But where we shouldn't be surprised is, don't forget, Harry, this is the individual that years ago was photographed wearing a Nazi uniform.
Because they're trying to convince the people who are having their very profitable and decent, well-paid jobs in places like Aberdeen cut because of the net zero agenda.
It's in Aberdeen.
Yes, that's right. They're telling them now that they this will be fine because they'll invent a kind of we'll invent a Mickey Mouse GBN job for you, which will obviously pay the same and be as productive as the one that we're giving up, even as we import energy from other countries.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Good morning, David, says Paul Willison. I despair at your two guests. Fact, you cross the channel in a dinghy, you enter this country illegally, you are a criminal. I would estimate 99% of people coming into this country are economic migrants not fleeing war. I give up. That's Paul in Hitchin. That was the point I was trying... What? Oh, Pat, David, I'm being told it's Gen Z, not Gen Z. We're not American. I think it's Gen Z. I think you have to say Gen Z. That's Andrew in Surrey. Paul, that was the point I was trying to make. How many of these people coming across in small boats are truly asylum seekers, and how many of them are actually economic migrants? I would wager a lot of the latter. Let's take some voice notes now. Anna from Surrey, good morning.
Morning, David. No, Louise Connolly did not make an error of judgment. She viewed an opinion, and we cannot go down this route where even people like yourselves are trying to curtail their and other people's opinions. If that is what that lady thought, and she did not incite violence, and she did not tell directly somebody to go and do something, and even then I think you're on dodgy ground, she should be able to post that. I should be able to post whatever I want, as long as this is not insightful. That is my opinion, and I will die on that hill of being able to say exactly what I think. If you are offended, if anyone out there is offended, that is your choice.
Wow, powerful. Now, I agree totally with you about freedom of speech. However, where you're on slightly dodgy ground there is that whether there was a incitement to violence, because on that message she actually said, I want to burn the hotel down, I think you will find, and that would be construed to be incitement to violence. So, but otherwise I take your point. Nick has left one from Solihull. Good morning.
Hi, Nick from Solihull here. 20-odd years ago, back in the Bassingbourne Barracks, I think, in Cambridgeshire, they started housing the first load 20 years ago, and they complained about the fencing, but it was to stop people getting in when it was a barracks. And lo and behold, they took the fencing down to make it feel better. So fencing will be taken down anyway. Cheerio.
Nick, thanks for that. Sue is in Worthing. Good morning.
Good morning, David. This is Sue in Worthing. What keeps me awake at night? Well, it doesn't actually keep me awake, but worries me more and more in this country is the lack of freedom of speech. Even if you voice your opinion and somebody doesn't agree with it, you don't have to shut them down. I feel the world is becoming smaller and smaller in terms of allowing freedom of speech. And to be honest with you, I think the West is promoting it more than anywhere else.
It's a really interesting point, actually. We were talking about this. Older people, even in this building, we were saying that actually you now have to think twice or three times more than we used to, and you have to be careful what you say. Freedom of speech is really important, and as I said, if you don't have freedom of speech, then all you do is drive it underground, and that then becomes much more dangerous. Adrian is on the line with a voice note from East Sussex. Good morning.
Hi, David. Great show on a Sunday morning. Tell you what keeps me awake at night.
broken promises from Reform and Nigel Farage. Where is the democratisation? Where is the grooming gang inquiry? Where is the mass deportation of people who are already in the country illegally? I don't see any of that. Really sad about that. That's what would make me happier, because at the moment I don't see we have an option other than Labour or Conservative. They all begin to look the same now.
Interesting. Democratisation, I can't answer on behalf of the party, but democratisation is underway, my understanding, in that party. Also, deportation. Well, obviously, Reform UK can't deport people because it's not the party of government. So I would counter it with that. But obviously, you're entitled to your own opinion. Keep your messages coming in. Hi, David. This is Jeremy in West Sussex. They're coming from France. Not a country at war or persecuting anyone, as far as I know. Stephen in London, your guests are naive, gullible fools to believe the majority of young male asylum seekers are genuine. That was the point I was trying to make as well, which actually is many of them, if not the majority of them, are economic migrants, and they are coming to this country because they think this country is somewhere that they want to be. Keep all those messages coming in, please. It's deliberately an open-ended question. What keeps you awake at night? It can be anything at all. 0344 499 1000. We got into a conversation about jeans being worn by older people. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. Anything that you want to talk about, let me know. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. We have still so much more still to come. We're going to be talking a little more about tariffs and Keir Starmer ordering this UK economic reset. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, and I'm not even quite sure what he means by I will shelter British business from the storm of Trump's trade war. Now, he's going to make a statement tomorrow. This is Keir Starmer. I have no idea what he thinks he means by that, and I hope he actually knows what he means as well. He will say that globalisation has actually failed because of the tariff war that is being raged, but so far, I think he is handling it quite well. So we shall see what the UK decides to do over the next few days in response to Donald Trump's tariffs being imposed on the United Kingdom of 10%. Now, after the break, I'm going to be joined by Vincent Moss, who's the former political editor at the Sunday Mirror, to talk about the week in politics.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Just after 9 o'clock now on Saturday, Sunday even, April the 6th. I was just looking out the window. Lovely, sunny, lovely April. Looks like spring is really here, actually. I hope you're having a great time wherever you are around the country. And great news for you, because for those of you in Brighton, you'll know about this. It's the Brighton Marathon taking place this morning around the Sussex Seaside Resort. 10,000 people are running for charity today. Well done, you. Actually, the biggest marathon in this country is London. That has 50,000 runners. That will be on the 27th of this month. But if you are running the Brighton Marathon, best of luck and well done. Also, it's Tartan Day today, a day showcasing the rich tapestry of Scottish heritage, culture, traditions. It commemorates the signing of the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320. And that's quite enough of that. And it's New Beer's Eve today. This day actually marks the day before the end of Prohibition in the United States, and it is a reminder that we are all free to enjoy beer, and we must do so.
We'll drink to Lily the pink, the saviour of the human race.
And on that note, let's move to our final hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Now, this is a good one. On this day in 1990, married women in Britain became independent entities for income tax purposes for the first time, making them responsible for their own tax declarations. The income previously was assessed with that of their husbands. In 1993, actually, talking of income tax, following public disquiet, the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, began paying income tax. On this day in 2012, a ban on tobacco displays was announced in England, with other parts of the United Kingdom planning similar action to drive down smoking rates. Cigarettes and other products had to be kept below the counter in large shops and restaurants, large shops and supermarkets, sorry. Prime Minister Boris Johnson on this day in 2020 remained in hospital after being admitted yesterday, this was the day before, with persistent coronavirus symptoms. He was aged 55 at the time. He tested positive for coronavirus 10 days before and had been self-isolating in Downing Street. And just for Tommy, I will read this one once again. On this day in 1974, Swedish pop group ABBA won the 19th annual Eurovision Song Contest in Brighton, Sussex with Waterloo. Now, the Swedish single was coupled on the other side, on the B-side, with Honey Honey. The English single featured Watch Out, I don't know that one, as the B-side. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Weekend mornings we're taking flight. The day before everything feels right. Weekend breakfast, shining like the sun.
Good morning. 6 minutes past 9 and now. Wow, let's just go through the front pages very quickly. The Observer, Starmer orders economic reset. This is after the Trump mayhem and the tariffs and everything. And actually, for me, I think he's got it right at the moment. He's said nothing. We're not retaliating. I think that's the right decision. I'm not quite sure whether they're asking businesses to decide a list of products that should have tariffs on them, but anyway, we shall see. Maybe it's bluster. And as you know, when China imposed 34% retaliatory tariffs, Trump replied in capital letters, not the right way to go about it, or words to that effect. The Sunday Times also, Starmer to admit globalisation has failed as the tariff war rages. So this is the dichotomy at government, the centre of government. We need to produce energy in this country. We need to make sure that we have food security in this country. So we need to make sure that we provide for people in this country. We've got to be less reliant on other countries, and I think that is right. The Sunday Telegraph, Starmer vows to shelter the UK from Trump tariff storm. how. No detail. We don't know how. Now, there's another big story this morning. This is the Mail. Starmer rocked as MP held in rape and child abuse probe. Dan Norris, a former Labour minister who ousted Jacob Rees-Mogg as the MP for North East Somerset in last year's general election, was taken into custody. The police raided his home on Friday. He trained as a child protection officer with the NSPCC and has worked as a teacher as well. And that is the same story in the Sunday Mirror. Labour MP's child sex and rape arrest. Those are the big headlines this morning. Barry is on the line from Norwich. Sunny Norwich. Good morning, Barry.
It's lovely and sunny in Norwich, yes.
Is it? Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm heading to Suffolk later, so I'm very excited about that.
Where's that?
Suffolk. Suffolk is the better county in East Anglia, remember?
I don't know where it is. I just thought I'd make one quick comment on your guest who said asylum seekers are not, stop criminalising them. Hello, they're breaking into the country illegally. It makes them criminals. Yeah. But yeah, getting back to Starmer and... he might be, because I heard you earlier on saying that he might be hitting benefits in that again.
Yeah.
This Labour government have hit the vulnerable too many times. How much more can you take off benefits? I mean, I go to work, and I have to claim universal credit to top my money up, right? And, you can't possibly take any more. I get there might be some people on benefits due lifestyle, but a lot of these disabled people who are claiming PIP now can't claim.
Yeah, that's right.
It. And I think it's an absolute scandal, to be frank. And then MPs are taking a pay rise next week.
Yes.
Which is just unbelievable.
And also, this article in The Spectator, which was actually written by Michael Gove, your thoughts on that? It basically, what it's saying is that Labour, the methodology of Labour should be to look after the poorest in society. That's pretty much what it should say on the tin. And yet, it doesn't seem to have any pragmatic purpose. It doesn't have a vision. It doesn't have the drive. It's pulling in lots of directions all at one go. There's no overarching umbrella.
Well, I remember Starmer before the election saying this party's ready for government, everything's costed, rah rah rah, yeah, and Labour. That's not a Labour Party no more, not as I knew it before with my father. Yeah, it's they are basically two cheeks on the same backside, like that guy said. There's no difference between Labour and Conservatives. I mean, my life's got a little bit worse, but there's not a lot of difference. But, they want to start cutting money from the British people. Stop these asylum seekers, stop putting up in hotels, stop giving them money, stop incentivising them to come across the channel. They're not fleeing a war-torn country. They're coming from France. And they're coming from a safe country before they get to France.
And of course, as I said, we've actually got more coming here since Starmer took power. So they know they're in trouble. They are going to have to do something about it, because at the end of the day, the people will vote with their feet.
Well, they're not going to do anything about it, are they? Because it was Blair who opened up the doors in 2004, a Labour Prime Minister. It's a choice what they're doing. They can stop it. It's a choice. They are happy to have these illegal immigrants coming across. Because if you're fleeing a war-torn country, I don't know if it's me or you, if you were fleeing a war-torn country, you'd bring your kids, your wife, your mother, your father, whoever, with you. You wouldn't just come on your own.
No.
If your place is getting bombed, you're going to bring whoever you can, aren't you?
And it's extraordinary, isn't it? They're all young men of a working age. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Well, the majority of them are. It's in Norwich, hotels around, I don't know if it's the same in Suffolk, Ipswich, but Norwich, majority of the hotels are full up with them.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, there is one, I can't mention the hotel chain, but there's a very big hotel chain that owns a number of brands. And if you go onto their website, their hotel rooms have doubled or trebled because they've got these bulk contracts with government to look after asylum seekers.
Oh, there's a lot of people making a lot of money off this.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying to you. It's not going to stop until they stop giving them hotels, stop giving them money, stop giving them free dental care, stop giving them free doctors, stop giving them free food, stop giving them everything. Do you know what I mean? That's the incentive. They need to stop that, and then the boats will stop. What about our human rights? The ECHR, what about the British people's human rights, your human rights, my human rights? Yeah, you know.
Well,
But anyway, that's my rant for today. Sorry.
Well, no, good. Rant over. Go and enjoy the sunshine in Norwich. Barry, thanks very much. Always good to talk to you. Thanks very much. I'm asking this morning, what keeps you awake at night? 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Kenny in Edinburgh. Hi, David. It annoys me how chirpy you are at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I love your show, but you're too cheerful. You're so early in the day. Cut it out. Good morning, Kenny. Thank you. Listen, my job is to entertain and to get you up out of bed and actually to try and be positive about the United Kingdom and the world. I mean, sometimes it's much more difficult than others. You should try getting up at 2:20 in the morning, Kenny. Also, Joanna in Salisbury says, what keeps me awake at night? Wondering what Rachel Reeves is going to take from me next. Short of taking my house keys, I don't have much left. Golly, yeah. Oh, crikey. Nick, good morning to you. David, what keeps me up at night is the agony of my hernia, which the NHS have told me will take upwards of 5 years to put right. That cannot be right. I'm so sorry, Nick. You need to get that sorted. Go back, get a second opinion. Right, let's move on. This is the section of the show where I ask a commentator to come up. We're talking about politics here, a week in politics. I ask a commentator to say who's had a good week, who's had a bad week, who really should be looking ahead to the week ahead, and also, quite frankly, who should have a week off. Joining me this morning is Vincent Moss, former political editor at the Sunday Mirror. Good morning, Vincent.
Morning, David, and morning to all your listeners and viewers on what's a very sunny day in South London. I hope it is for everybody else.
Oh, very nice. In South London, no less. Costa del South London. Now, nothing going on in politics whatsoever. Actually, that's a lie. 6 days I've been talking about tariffs and the reciprocality and all the rest of it. So just very quickly, politically, I mean, things have moved very quickly, haven't they, in the last 7 days?
Yes, it's dominated the headlines, quite rightly so. It affects everybody. I mean, Donald Trump has potentially put us on the brink of potentially a global recession, trillions wiped off the US stock markets and US businesses, British businesses not really able to export. Jaguar Land Rover have put their exports to the States on pause, and lots of money wiped off British businesses on the stock market over here. So a really tumultuous few days.
So, in this section, I ask you to find one politician who has had a good week, and who would you like to nominate today?
Well, it's not easy, but I do think, as you've been saying earlier, Keir Starmer, because as in a bad week for tariffs and the global economy, he seems to have handled it pretty well. I mean, if you look at the other countries, their tariff levels, China 34%, EU 20%, Vietnam 46%, Switzerland 32%. When we've only got tariff levels at the moment of 10%, albeit it's a bit different for cars and steel, we look as though we've escaped the worst of it. Starmer's talking to world leaders about a plan of action. Clearly, the best plan is if we can all unite and try and persuade Trump this is not the way to go. So he looks, in a very tumultuous environment, as though he's had a pretty good week. So I'd say Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually. And I think this idea of just sitting back, keeping calm, don't panic, don't have a knee-jerk response is the right thing to do. I mean, I mentioned this yesterday. Macron sort of absolutely apoplectic, saying they're going to hit back very hard. They talk about the EU being the largest trading bloc in the world of 450 million consumers. Ursula von der Leyen very much coming out on the war path. That isn't going to play well with Trump.
No, it isn't. And we never know what he's going to do next. He may change his mind by Tuesday. But I think that, as you say, that the position that Starmer has taken seems to be sensible. I was interested in what you said earlier as well about this language he's talking about today about an economic reset. And I just wonder if that's a bit of pitch rolling for potentially rewriting the financial rules that would allow Rachel Reeves the chance to restore the fiscal headroom. She's already had to do it once when she was 10 billion down, and it looks as though it's fast disappearing again. And I just wonder whether economic reset is code and a little bit of language for look, things have really changed around here. We're going to change the fiscal rules. And by changing the fiscal rules, that would give the Chancellor a lot more headroom, and she certainly needs
Well,
it.
it certainly would. And actually, I said that this is an excellent opportunity for the government to rethink its entire economic policy, actually. You could say, look, things have changed so dramatically, we're not going to raise employer national insurance contributions, for example. That will be put back. We'll delay that. We could actually not impose VAT on private schools. We could, or whatever you want to do, or farmers, or inheritance tax. And actually, this would be incredible cover for them to basically have an entire reset and take the country with them. Will they do that?
Well, absolutely. I think they probably need to do something, because the world has changed massively since the election. And it was crazy in many ways for any government to lock themselves into the tax pledges that Labour did about no rises in income tax and all the rest of it for 5 years. But the trouble is, nowadays in modern politics, pretty much all governments have to say they're not going to raise taxes. But sometimes you need to. The question is not really whether you tax people. It's about who you tax and how you tax them. And the problem with the Labour narrative so far is it's been seen as an attack on those potentially among the most vulnerable. You had a caller on earlier talking about PIP and disability benefits. So it feels as though a lot of people at the bottom of the scale, we're talking about the NICS changes that come in today, national employer contributions, a lot of that for the first time is hitting lower paid workers, or certainly the employer contributions on lower paid workers.
Yeah.
So there's a feeling even among Labour supporters that some of the worst hit at the moment are some of the poorest, and that's a narrative that Labour will be keen to change.
So if you were going to have a crystal ball, what do you think she might do?
It's very difficult, isn't it? I think there is a demand out there. I think wealth taxes don't work. I think they're a bad idea. They've not been shown to work in other countries. But I think they would like, certain Labour voters would like to see, if you like, an attack on what are always referred to as the broader shoulders. I wonder whether there's scope for a further potential raid on banks, potentially. They've done rather well out of the recent interest rate rises. Their profits are up. Or some big sector where you could take some money out of and people would feel that as a bit of a redress. Potentially some of the energy sector. I don't know whether there's room there, but she needs to find some more money from somewhere, and it can't yet again be from working people or the vulnerable and the disabled. That's the problem.
I mean, isn't actually the more honest and pragmatic solution is to say put a penny on income tax across the board?
Absolutely. It's the most transparent, it's the fairest, but it's an election pledge, and Labour's in a really difficult place if it wants to go back on that one. Imagine what the leaflets at the next election will say from Reform and the Conservatives if Labour dares to do that. I think there is an argument the world has changed enough that you could change your plans dramatically on tax. I just think the income tax issue is so totemic and such a big decision. That's one of the hardest ones to raise.
OK, so that's someone who's had a good week. Who's had a bad week?
Has to be Donald Trump. I mean, there's no way he could think it would play out as badly as it has. He's pro-business at the end of the day. He's wiped trillions off the stock market. American businesses are thinking, what are we going to do? All our costs are going to rise because their supply chains, a load of them are overseas. You look at an airline that's made in the States, all the parts tend to come from all over the world. And what about American consumers? This is going to mean their prices go up dramatically. So there's going to be a rebellion amongst them as well. So it's not just American business and other countries that are worried. It's what it'll do to his base and voters like that. I mean, I admire the chutzpah of the guy in some ways. He's literally put us on the brink of a global recession potentially, and he's out on the golf course. Incredible, really. But
I mean, it's extraordinary. And also, there's a great article this morning. When you look at these tariffs, right, trying to work out why each country got certain percentages. So we got 10%, but so did Colombia, Argentina and El Salvador and the UAE and Saudi. 60%, or 60 worst offenders he talks about. Vietnam, 46%. What has Cambodia done to get 49%? South Africa, 30%. But here's the one that I find the most extraordinary. The Falkland Islands. They got 42% tax. They have no idea why.
It's astonishing, isn't it? And I know the British government's trying to work out what's going on there and fix that. But a lot of these almost seem to be based on his personal views on things. Or he wants something from a particular country. There may be something he wants them to concede. So it may, for all sorts of reasons, and there are a complete variety of taxes. It's almost like when you're at school and your mates are picking the football team or something, or you're choosing who your best friends are. He just seems to be doing it in a completely random way. But that's Trump for you, isn't it? I just think that we need to see something moving in the next week or so, because, I mean, in the UK, even if we don't think we're directly affected yet, this affects people's pensions, because so much of the stock market is pension investments, and it's a real problem, because if UK firms, we don't export a huge amount to America, but if it affects exports, that affects business, and it'll mean layoffs, and it's a real problem, and Trump's got to do something. But it's been a terrible week for him. I can't believe for a moment he thought it would play out.
But he thinks it's been a great week.
He says he thinks it's been a great week. Does he really think that, I wonder?
I think he does.
Well,
I do.
Who knows?
I mean, it's quite interesting, though, in terms of the calculation. I read quite an interesting article, and it looks like you've got some sort of A-level economist student who essentially took the bilateral trade deficit and divided it by exports. And it is that, I mean, it's just, that's how they've done it, I think. And as you probably say, Donald Trump wants the Falklands fish.
It would be something like that, won't it? There's all sorts of bizarre reasons he does these things, but he's also very quick to trim and change course when he thinks something isn't working. And as we know with him from the past, whatever happens, he will present it as a success, and it was the plan all along. So I think he'll see how things play out. But if the markets continue to fall again on Monday when they reopen, he's going to have to do something pretty drastic, because people won't stand for that for long.
No, I would agree. Now, let's talk about the week ahead. Who should we keep an eye on this week?
Well, I think it's got to be Nigel Farage and Reform. We've been focused on tariffs, but we're coming up to some really important local elections on May the 1st, and the Runcorn by-election on May the 1st, which a Labour-held seat. The MP lost it after punching somebody in the street, and he got a conviction. Now, it looks like Reform will win that by-election, and they'll be looking to make gains. Oh, I think so, yes. Because I think that the Conservatives who were distant, I think, third or fourth last time, that some of their vote will stay at home. I could be wrong in saying this. I think the candidate's former Conservative. I think there'll be such bad feeling against Labour generally in terms of the handling the economy. By-elections always protest time. I think there's a really good chance Reform could win that by-election. I think they could do well in the local elections. We'll see the campaigning going on, and I think it'll be a week to watch for if Reform can turn those poll results, which have been very good in the last few weeks and months, into concrete seats, and start to build, as the Lib Dems did, start to build a power base which they'll need at local council level to use that as a launch pad to start winning more seats at parliamentary level.
So this is quite interesting, and there's a new poll that's just been launched. It's in the Sunday Times today. Labour on 218, that's down 193 seats. Conservatives 136, up 15. Reform is on 135, so giving them another 130 members of Parliament. If that is true, that's pretty seismic.
It's a lot, but of course, it's the first past the post system in this country that tends to favour Labour and the Conservatives. That's why so many people want electoral reform, because I think it was last time Reform got 4 million votes. Well, that's not really reflected in the 4 or 5.
Well, no, that's right. 4 million votes and 5 MPs. Exactly right.
So there is that issue. The first past the post means that figure is unlikely to happen. Doesn't mean Reform won't get millions of votes, but it's quite odd because you see a lot of people on the right not necessarily in favour of electoral reform and now are thinking, hang on, there may be something in reforming the electoral system if we're getting millions of votes and we're only sitting here with 4 or 5 MPs. But a crucial time, I think, for Reform, because you need to see if those, if the popularity in the polls is transformed into real votes.
Well, quite right. And of course, we have to be careful because we're in Perda for the locals and for the mayoral elections. Let's move on, though. I love this question. I love asking this question. Who do you think should have a week off?
100% Sharon Graham, the leader of the Unite Union that's behind the bin strikes in Birmingham. 17,000 tonnes of rubbish on their street. If this was in London, I know I say this as somebody who's living in London, this would be topping the news every day. It's a huge scandal up there. Unite are absolutely entrenched. And of course, now the weather's getting warmer. I dread to think what it's like up there with the stench from those bins. So Unite, I mean, there's calls from everybody for people to get round the table. People of Birmingham, let's not forget, have had council tax rises of 18% because of the broken finances of that council over the last 2 years. So it's a real problem, and it's time that Unite sort of, I think, came to the negotiating table and cut a deal, because it's crazy that they're effectively holding a whole city and its residents to ransom.
Vincent, cracking solutions, cracking choices there. Thank you very much for your time. Vincent Moss there, former political editor of the Sunday Mirror. Lots of messages coming in. Michelle, good morning to you. Barry said it all. This is Barry in Norwich. I was also born in Norwich, and I'm so sad to hear it's full of illegal criminals. An army is slowly creeping into this country, and the government need to answer, why is it being allowed to continue? It's absurd. It is getting dangerous. I fear a civil war at this rate. This is Hugh in Basingstoke. David, you are a great presenter. That's very kind. Now, the greedy hotel chains may rue the day that they took the King's shilling. Who is going to stay in the Grand Hotel in Sunblest-on-Sea ever again? It's a really good point, this. There is another hotel chain, which I won't mention, which is very well known for its advertising, but it has said it does not take in any government contracts to look after illegal or asylum seekers, and it has said that, and many people have responded very positively. There is a very large hotel chain which looks after a number of hotel brands, and many people are now saying, I'm going to start boycotting that particular organisation because basically they have taken the King's shilling, as Hugh quite rightly says. David, the gent from Norfolk, this is William, Will in Warrington. The gent from Norfolk was spot on about stopping the freebies for illegal migrants. I've been saying it for ages. And one more just before the break. Simon in Durham, I've been asking all morning, what is it that keeps you awake at night? I'll tell you, David, what keeps me awake at night. It's the bloody cat. Have a sunny day in Suffolk later on. Thanks very much. This is Talk.
ended up in court, and a federal judge has said the United States has got to return him after he was mistakenly deported, deport him by Monday. So it's kind of interesting to see how that will play out, because of course Trump has gone really hard on these, you know, I'm going to be really tough on immigration. That was a really big part of his electioneering was this immigration. I mean, tough on it, and he made like quite a big show, and it was televised. These people being deported, all in chains and put in jail.
Lowe has had his personal gun collection seized by the police. He is now, of course, an independent MP, kicked out of Reform over bullying allegations. He had the weapons taken from him apparently last month. Mr. Lowe has vowed to clear his name and said he is cooperating fully with the Gloucestershire Constabulary as the guns were confiscated from his Cotswold farm.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9:31, Sunday, April the 6th. I'm asking, what keeps you awake at night? The number 0344 499 1000. It can be anything, global insecurity, the cost of living. It could be about just your optimism, general view on the future of this country. It could be the future of your grandchildren. It could be anything, 0344 499 1000. But now it's time for Rupert's War Roundup.
Rupert's
Rupert's Royal Roundup. Hello, Rupert.
Morning, David.
Morning. You're sounding very chipper, old man.
Well, I've had a week at Liverpool at the Grand National.
Yes. Now, we need to talk about this, right? So I did put on a wager.
Right.
So I bet I didn't do very well. I wanted Duffel Coat because I thought that was a good name. That didn't do very well. It fell over. And then...
Yeah, it fell at the third, I think.
Yes, it did. I wasn't very pleased with that.
Yes.
And then I did Phil Dorr at 40 to 1. That didn't do very well. Then Ida's Boy, 90 to 1. That's why I did that one. Didn't do very well. Yeah. And then I did I Am Maximus only because it won last year, each way, and I managed to get 50p more than I bet.
Well, yes, because the horse was about 13 to 2. Yeah, so, yes, at least you got your money back on that one. And actually... it was a very brave run, actually, from Nick Rocket, from I Am Maximus. Nick Rocket, great story there. Willie Mullins training the first three. That's an extraordinary achievement. And more importantly, Nick Rocket ridden by his son Patrick. And Willie Mullins is normally not overly emotional, but he was really quite... he was in floods of tears afterwards as he talked about the moment training a horse ridden by his son and the significance of the National. Of course, there was... on a serious note, there were a couple of moments that certainly, with Broadway Boy having a nasty fall and Celeb Dalen collapsing in the home straight. But the news I'm hearing this morning is both went to the stables last night at Aintree and have now both on their way, or certainly Broadway Boy is going back home to his stables in Gloucestershire. Okay. So, which is some good news in terms of there was genuine concerns about the well-being of those horses, but the good news is they are on their road to recovery. Whether we see them on the racecourse, we know not. But the good news is they are going back to their stables, I believe.
Good. And what was the atmosphere like?
It is always... Well, it's very different to most meetings. It's more about the sort of Merseyside occasion. There were 60,000 people there yesterday.
Wow.
So, and a great buzz. 48,000 on Friday for Ladies' Day. So the people of Merseyside embrace this festival almost like no other. And there's a lot of Prosecco goes down over the 3 days. I think 10,000 bottles get consumed. And that's probably, and actually fair play to keeping the prices down. People talk about how expensive. They said, right, well, we'll just take £10 off the price of Prosecco, I believe, so that people, it wasn't seen as just a sort of money-grubbing exercise. So they are trying to find a way to make sure that people don't feel, as it's expensive to put on these events, that they're being people are being ripped off once they get inside the racecourse.
I mean, I have to say, I do like the sense of occasion, when people come together, when people dress up, all of that kind of stuff, and the quintessentially British pageantry, I suppose.
Well, I wouldn't... This is Liverpool pageantry.
Well, it's still Britain.
Yeah, no, but they do it in their unique way.
Right, go on then.
That's the point. It's not the sort of... it's everyone. Look, everyone is dressed up, but they don't care what they're dressed up in. As long short skirts, long skirts, you name. Not much clothing. I don't know. and men don't wear socks. I don't know, which is a complete anathema to me. But overall, that's the whole point of it. It's a uniquely Liverpool occasion.
Well, quite.
And that's what it. And actually, Liverpool entering that's what they want to make it. That it feels. That it has its own identity, and that's part of what it is. And obviously the race itself is a national institution, but it always has got to be aware that the optics can sometimes play out that doesn't endear itself to everyone. But from a positive note from yesterday, it appears that horses are, the horses are on the road to recovery.
Very good. So I can't quite believe this fact, but on Wednesday it is 20 years since King Charles married Camilla.
Yeah, I must admit, I suddenly thought, 20 years, where's that time gone?
Yeah, because it honestly feels like yesterday.
Yeah, and they got married on... The Grand National was run on the day that they got married, and the Queen made a speech that... which actually referred to the Grand National, how many hurdles they'd gone over. Because, let's be honest, when it sort of got back together again after the divorce from Diana and all that, and there was a great anti-feeling towards the Queen, and that she was certainly the wicked stepmother, you name it. She was not someone who had the public took to. But over a very clever strategy, they've kept her now, brought her into the fold. It's been a sort of drip feed. And actually, when you look over the last 18 months or so, she has been the sort of rock that's at times kept the royal show on the road, bearing in mind that the King is recovering from cancer and the Princess of Wales, likewise, recovering from cancer. So they were down on numbers. So she's had to do some of the many more probably engagements than she would. Remember, she's also 77. So most people then might be thinking it's time to take it easier, but no one would fault her sort of commitment. And importantly, she will be going to Italy. The state visit, I believe, is still going to go ahead for the King this week to Italy. Not going to see the Pope, but it will be, I think, a 2-day trip to Italy. And she will be by his side. And obviously, later on the week, they will be celebrating, as you say, their 20th wedding anniversary.
I mean, it is extraordinary, actually, and very clever, sort of the way that the palace has played this, of course, because you're right, there was this kind of resentment towards Camilla, and then latterly, then she became the Queen Consort, didn't she? Isn't it amazing how that last word got dropped?
Well, yeah, let's put it this way. It's probably easier. You know, the Queen Consort, you know, just
No,
to
but
say
it was
Queen.
clever. It was really clever, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it then became, people went, oh, she's just the Queen, right?
Yeah.
And then it became,
Yeah.
so it made perfect sense. But it was a good move by the late Queen to say that, you know, that she should be referred to as the Queen's Consort, which then elevates her status. But obviously now, everyone just refers to her as Queen Camilla.
Rupert, we have to take a break just very quickly before we do. Eric in Barnsley says, hi David, please pass on my thanks to Rupert for his tip. I put £340, or I got £340 on Nick Rocket.
No, well, can I just say, I'm not going to lay claim. I worked with a lady called Lizzie Kelly, and she was the one who put it on. So thank you for listening to Lizzie, which is far better than listening to me. So I'm not going to. I could easily say yes, it was my tip, but I'll be truthful because I don't want to be told that you never tipped that horse. But
Well, no. So the bigger problem I have is Nick Ellaby told us who was going to win, and I ignored him, and I bet on some other horses.
Well done, Nick Ellaby. You see, and I'm supposed to be the racing expert, but never mind.
Never mind. Rupert, just stay where you are. I'll be back with you in just a few short moments. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's resume our conversation with Rupert Bell, royal correspondent and expert in racing. Let's now talk about this, the latest with Prince Andrew. This is amazing. Prince Andrew's involvement with an alleged Chinese spy came at a time his chief aide and other royals believed his reputation was irrecoverable. This is weird. I spoke about it yesterday about Dominic Hampshire. This is his ex-advisor. and he's been revealed in these documents, hasn't he, about Yang Tembo. Just tell us where we are and what we have learned subsequently.
Well, it appears that Dominic Hampshire and Prince Andrew all had a meeting with the King and to try and understand what was going in Yang Tembo as well. So it was all a bit messy. But it appears we also seem to be entering into the realms of, getting into Windsor Castle, having secret meetings. And basically, Prince Andrew's finances are always being assessed and worked out how he's dealing through his Picture Palace projects and various other things that he's been involved with. And of course, he's living in Royal Lodge, which he has an expensive commitment to maintain. So with the fact that he is sidelined, I think he was pictured riding a horse yesterday in Windsor Great Park, but there are talk that he's still carrying on with his business investments. So they're looking into what's going on. But obviously the King being sort of dragged into it a little bit sort of muddies the water. But wonder what was the reason why the King wanted. Was it because he just wanted to understand what was going on here and made sure that there were no problems? We don't really know. So it's murky. As much of Prince Andrew's business dealings feels at times that sometimes he sailed a bit close to the water, and obviously most notably being linked with Jeffrey Epstein and all the problems that has come from his association. He does seem to have over the years, problems with who he's associated as he's trying to make a bit of a fast buck here or there. So it's been a problem for him, and this is another one that has to be resolved somehow. But his rehabilitation, I don't see it happening at any time soon in the eyes of the British public. And this sort of how remember, he's 65, so relatively young and still, but is he just twiddling his thumbs in the Royal Lodge, playing a bit of golf, riding a horse? What is he doing? Playing video games? Or is he still doing some business in the Middle Eastern places? By all accounts, he's made a trip to Switzerland, I think. So there are definitely things going on in his life, but what they are, we're not sure.
I mean, the whole thing just seems incredibly unedifying, actually, and I mentioned this yesterday, but surely, and I will give the King the benefit of the doubt, if you've got a, let's say, errant brother, or a brother where you're a little concerned about some of the activities that he may be getting involved in, then surely as a brother, there's nothing wrong with meeting with your brother and saying, what exactly are you doing? Is this a good idea? And having some advice.
Yeah, I think that I'm beginning to, I feel that that's probably what's going on. But don't forget, the King over times has, sort of people who work from going around with bags of cash. So it's not always been straightforward for some of the King's people he's had around him, although not necessarily the King involved. But, the royal family can occasionally, people want to be seen with the royal family. So occasionally, the people who may be sailing, with their financial dealings a bit close to the wind, degree of respectability by association with the royal family. So it's not an easy, it's a balancing act. And obviously now it will always be scrutinised. And I think even now, because, it is straitened times at the moment. People are finding it an economically tough time. If the royal family look to be sort of carrying on in a cavalier fashion, that won't go down well with the British public. So the royal family have to be very mindful how they go about their day-to-day business, and particularly, there's talk, we never heard about Prince Philip's will. I think that's locked up for 90 years. We probably won't ever know what was in the Queen's will as well. So all the we never quite know enough. But I'm not saying we should have it, but the royal family have to make sure that they're going about their business in as squeaky clean fashion as is possible.
Right. You know how much I love Harry and Meghan. You know that, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so there's a big article in the Daily Mail. Prince Harry should be nervous his unpleasant message to Centre Barley boss will leak to the public because he's been so outspoken about his wife being bullied in the past. Apparently, there's all sorts of gossip involved in this. Apparently, Harry allegedly sent her an unpleasant and imperious message that reinforced ideas that he's used to people being subservient to him when Centre Barley's chair refused to publicly back his wife in a row over the polo event last year. Look, there are two sides to every story, aren't there? It's difficult to get the truth here. What's your reading of what is going on? I mean, the whole thing's really acrimonious.
It is. And as you say, he said, she said. There's an element of that. But Dr. Sophie Chandulkar has certainly gone onto the front foot. And if there were these messages, and by all accounts, the person who wrote that article is absolutely convinced that this is true, that he did try and say to it, you need to now try and paint Meghan in a positive PR light. And she was basically saying, I'll have none of that, and by all accounts. And that broke down their relationship. So obviously Harry and his fellow trustees aren't happy with this. But what she's also saying, that's Sophie Chandulkar saying, Harry, because of what he's done over the last 3 or 4 years, has created a problem for his charity in that they struggle to raise funds. And then there was the trustees are saying, well, why is she spending £400,000 on consultants? But these consultants are trying to work out the best way forward for the charity, given Harry at times is a toxic brand, because he's been obviously very disrespectful, you would say, to the royal family. And obviously, Meghan and all the allegations that she and the sort of furor around her. So it's almost he's now got it back on his foot now. That's how is he going to deal with this? And it doesn't look good for Harry if it's true of what is supposed to be said in those texts. But it's ultimately the only losers in this are the people who are supposed to be benefiting from the Centre Barley charity, because it's being investigated by the Charity Commission, and at the same time, presumably they're struggling to raise the necessary funds to go about their business.
And of course, Prince Harry and his friend Prince Satho has also resigned from this. It's an absolute mess. I mean, they're accusing her of poor governance, as you say. I think fundamentally also Harry isn't the asset that he once was to that charity.
No, and because he's no longer part of the royal family, as we were mentioning earlier, people like to associate themselves with the royal family because it can be seen in a positive light. And Centre Barley definitely had all the right intentions and what it was meant to do. But it's obviously gone sour, and sometimes you get the impression playing polo, raising charity, that looks like very much a sort of imperial back to the days of the Raj. We're raising money through polo. Is that the optics that the charity should be presenting? And that's one of the things that Sophie Chandulkar was saying. We need to bring it back into Africa and actually bring it back to where it's most needed, and look as if, rather than going around and having jolly days playing polo, yes, you might be able to raise money, but is that the right optics for the sport? And as he's no longer part of the royal family, it is harder for him because he's actually got to put in the hard yards. And yes, he was very good at doing all this stuff, and we've seen him actually enjoy and engage with people when he's out there. But at the moment, he's got a lot of problems in terms of dealing, with where he is going. What direction does he go now? With his wife, okay, you may disagree with what she's doing to jam jars and elevating them to new levels of sophistication and honey and all that. But she's at least, in her words, she's trying to become a billionaire and make as much money as possible. But what's Harry doing? At the moment, he looks a rather rudderless man who's now lost the charity to Centre Barley. Invictus Games, well, that is still something that he's involved in. But even with that earlier this year, Meghan turns up and steals the show a bit, rather than the focus on the servicemen and women who were taking part there. So it's not an easy path for him at the moment, because he's not sure where he can go, because does he get into business? Well, he does a few things, but I'm not sure how well they're going either.
Right, okay, Rupert. Always good to talk to you. Thanks ever so much, Rupert. Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent. We'll take a break. Loads of voice notes coming in, lots of messages coming in as well. Keep all of those messages coming in. The final part of Weekend Breakfast coming up after this break.
ended up in court, and a federal judge has said the United States has got to return him after he was mistakenly deported, deport him by Monday. So it's kind of interesting to see how that will play out, because of course Trump has gone really hard on these. I'm going to be really tough on immigration. That was a really big part of his electioneering was this immigration. I mean, tough on it, and he made like quite a big show, and it was televised. These people being deported, all in chains and put in jail.
Lowe has had his personal gun collection seized by the police. He is now, of course, an independent MP, kicked out of Reform over bullying allegations. He had the weapons taken from him apparently last month. Mr. Lowe has vowed to clear his name and said he is cooperating fully with the Gloucestershire Constabulary as the guns were confiscated from his Cotswold farm.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Final part, loads of voice notes. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, David. Loving the shirt this morning. Regarding the people coming over on the boats, number one, they are criminals. Number two, if they were fleeing a war, they'd be bringing their wives and children along, and they're not. These are all young-age fighting men. They are criminals and have entered the UK illegally. And if you've got all the ones that are Albanians, they've got a lovely country. They're all driving around in fast cars. It's a holiday resort. So, I mean, really, we're a laughing stock, aren't we? Thank you.
Thank you. Alan is left a voice note in Swansea. Good morning.
Regarding what keeps me up at night, absolutely nothing, buddy. A few years ago, I see through the Matrix. It's all a load of garbage. You remember, we had the ozone crisis, the acid rain crisis. Later on, we had the COVID crisis, net zero crisis, cost of living crisis, food crisis, Ukraine crisis, Afghan crisis, Iraq crisis. It'd be crisis if it wasn't a crisis. Just live your life, buddy. I'll do whatever I want to do. I won't be told by anybody. I'm law-abiding, but I got my common sense, and nobody will tell me what I should be doing. Simple as that. Whoever's in power, it's the same garbage. So live your life, look after your family, and stop worrying, baby. Love your shirt, Dave. Keep up the good work. Ta-ra, buddy.
Thank you very much. I've got another one here as well. Peter in Norwich saying, I love your shirt. So thanks very much for that. They all came in latterly, didn't they? Kind of a bit, spring-like. Illegal immigration has changed the whole character and safety of this country. No longer a country to be proud of. All our trusted institutions can no longer, in capitals, be trusted. Parliament, police, armed forces, NHS, education, all being deliberately dismantled. Thank you very much for that. Right, JB, voice note, good morning.
Morning, David. It's a little bit hypocritical to say people in their 60s shouldn't be wearing jeans and then saying we should have free speech. If people want to wear jeans in their 60s, then let them. If they want to wear miniskirts in their 60s, then let them. Well, if they want to dress as a punk in their 60s, then let them. But they should also have free speech. Just let people do their own thing, and we all need to stop having judgmental opinions.
I knew I was going to be in trouble for that the minute it came out of my mouth. All I was trying to say was, do they look good when you reach a certain age? I mean, there are certain... I'll stop digging. Yeah. There are things that I can't wear now because I'm, older in age. Right, David, voice note. Good morning.
Good morning, David. David here from North Down. Just wondering about this pay rise for MPs, and will they reject it? That would be the sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
Considering what this government's doing to the people at the bottom of the food chain. They are ridiculous.
Good one. Ian, voice note. Good morning.
Morning, David. Ian from Hemel Hempstead. Both yourself and your commentator there thought Keir Starmer had a good week by basically saying nothing and keeping quiet. that really, really sums up that man. What makes a good week for him? Doing nothing. But to be fair, that's how he got into power, wasn't it? So
yes.
That's probably the way forward for Al Keir. Say nothing.
Say nothing. Well said, well said. Nick, voice note next.
Morning, David. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. I think Starmer will row back on some of the ludicrous decisions made by his Chancellor because he's facing a bloodbath at the May local elections and he will want to avoid that at all costs. Have a good weekend, David.
Thank you. You have a good weekend as well. Peter Caldwell, good morning.
Good morning, David. How are you?
So this is my thing, that I think Keir Starmer could row back on some of his policies.
Yes.
Do you think so?
Yeah, which ones do you think he'll row back on?
Well, employing national insurance would be a nice one. Contribution.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, they've already they've already spent the money.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. But they could use this, as I think we touched on this yesterday, they could use this to say the global situation has changed so much that we are actually going to revisit all our economic...
I think they are, but I don't think that's going to be good for the taxpayer. I think that's going to mean more taxation. I think in the budget, the taxes are going to go up.
Lower tax, get investment into the country.
By all means, that you can advocate that, but I am
advocating
that. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. But we've got a Labour government and it's not going to, I'm afraid.
I should be in government.
Should you?
Yes.
All right, well, one of us believes that. Yeah.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah, indeed. Coming up on the show today, we're talking about Putin's secret war in the UK waters. What's going on here? Should you prepare a 72-hour survival kit as Putin plots to sabotage our gas pipelines as well?